My sister deliberately scheduled her wedding on the exact same day as mine. Just as I expected, our parents didn't hesitate, they chose her ceremony without a second thought. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply said I understand. But on the wedding day, something unexpected happened. They abandoned her venue entirely and showed up at mine, frantic, desperate to be let in. That was the moment they realized the truth. They hadn't just chosen the wrong wedding, they had bet on the wrong daughter. My name is Zara. I'm 32 years old, and I spent my life being invisible to the people who claimed to love me. I'm really grateful you're still here with me. Before the story continues, take a moment to comment where you're watching from. And just so you know, this story contains a mix of dramatized and fictional elements added for narrative impact. Any similarities to real names or places are coincidental, but the lesson I'm sharing with you is intentional and meaningful. Growing up in the affluent suburbs of Atlanta, being a Davis meant maintaining an image of perfection. But inside our colonial brick home, there was a clear hierarchy. There was Bianca, my younger sister, with her light skin, loose curls, and desperate need for validation. And then there was me, Zara. Darker-skinned, fiercely independent, and according to my mother, too difficult to love. While Bianca spent her 20s chasing rich husbands and curating her Instagram feed, I was in Washington, D.C., building a career as a crisis management consultant for the country's top politicians. My family thought I was a freelance copywriter struggling to pay rent. I let them believe it. It was safer that way. The war began on a humid Tuesday evening at Le Bilboquet. The air smelled of expensive perfume and truffle oil. I had gathered my parents and Bianca for dinner to share news I had held close to my chest for months. My fiancé Dante sat beside me. His hand was warm and steady against the small of my back. To my family, Dante was just a street jazz musician who played in Harlem dive bars. They did not know that he owned the jazz clubs, nor did they know he owned the 3 historic brownstones above them. I took a deep breath and smiled. Dante and I have finally set a date, I announced, sliding the Save the Date card across the white tablecloth. We are getting married on October 15th at the St. Regis. The table went silent. My mother, Evelyn, barely glanced at the card. She was too busy scrutinizing Dante's dreadlocks. But it was Bianca who reacted first. She dropped her fork, the metal clattering loudly against the china. She covered her mouth, her eyes widening in a performance worthy of an Academy Award. No! She gasped, tears instantly welling in her eyes. October 15th. Zara, you cannot. I frowned. Why not? We have been planning this for a year. Because that is the date Madame Laveau gave me, Bianca sobbed, grabbing my mother's hand. I went to see the spiritual advisor yesterday. She said October 15th is the only auspicious date for Liam and me to marry. If we do not marry on that specific day, our union is cursed. I stared at her. Liam Sterling, the heir to the Sterling banking fortune, had proposed to Bianca 2 months ago. They had not set a date yet. Now suddenly, she needed my date. Bianca, I said, keeping my voice even. That is 6 months away. I have already put down a deposit. My father Marcus cleared his throat. He looked at me with that familiar mix of disappointment and exhaustion. Zara, be reasonable. Liam comes from one of the most prominent families in Martha's Vineyard. We cannot ask the Sterlings to adjust their schedule because of some superstition, but if Bianca believes this is important, we must support her. Support her, I repeated, feeling the heat rise in my chest. You want me to move my wedding day because a psychic told her to steal mine. It is not just about the date, Zara, my mother interjected, her voice sharp. Look at the reality. You are marrying Dante, a musician. No offense, Dante, but your guest list will likely be modest. Bianca is marrying a Sterling. This wedding could change our family's social standing forever. We need October 15th. It is peak season. It is perfect. I looked at Dante. His face was impassive, but his thumb rubbed circles on my hand, a silent signal to stay calm. I looked back at my parents. They were not asking me. They were telling me. In their eyes, my happiness was a commodity that could be traded for Bianca's social climbing. Fine, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I will keep my date. October 15th. Bianca can have it too. I do not care. Bianca stopped crying instantly. But Mom and Dad will have to choose, she smirked, wiping a dry tear. And obviously they have to be at the Sterling wedding. It is a networking opportunity. I understand, I said, picking up my wine glass. Choose the venue you are most proud of. My mother let out a sigh of relief, patting Bianca's hand. Thank you for finally being mature, Zara. Honestly, a smaller, intimate ceremony suits you better anyway. Maybe a park or a community center. I took a sip of the vintage Cabernet. It tasted like blood. I was done being mature. If they wanted a war, I would give them a revolution. 2 days later, I walked into the lobby of the St. Regis Atlanta. The marble floors gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. I had an appointment with Mr. Henderson, the event manager, to finalize the menu tasting. I had booked the grand ballroom 14 months ago using a pseudonym to keep my privacy a standard practice in my line of work. When I arrived at the reception desk, Mr. Henderson was already standing there. He looked uncomfortable. Beside him stood Bianca, wearing oversized sunglasses and looking smug. Ms. Davis. Mr. Henderson began wiping sweat from his forehead. There has been a complication. I looked at Bianca, then back at him. What kind of complication? It seems there was a double booking, he stammered. The Sterling family, their assistants, called. They expressed a very strong desire to secure the grand ballroom for October 15th. Given their long-standing relationship with our hotel chain and the fact that you are, well, family, we assumed you would be willing to switch to the smaller garden room. Bianca stepped forward, flipping her hair. I told him you would not mind, Zara. The garden room is cute. It fits 50 people. That is all you need for your little musician friends, right? Besides, Liam's mother, Eleanor Sterling, specifically asked for this ballroom. You do not say no to Eleanor Sterling. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. Bianca had not just stolen my date. She had used her fiancé's name to bully the venue into breaching my contract. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice icy. I have a signed contract and a receipt for a $20,000 deposit. I understand, he said, avoiding my eyes, but the contract has a clause regarding force majeure and administrative discretion. We will refund your deposit in full, of course, plus 10% for the inconvenience. He slid a check across the counter. It was already printed. They had prepared this ambush. Bianca laughed, a light tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. Take the money, Zara. You can use it to buy a better dress. Or pay Dante's rent for a few months. I looked at the check. Then I looked at Mr. Henderson. He was terrified of the Sterlings. He had no idea he was staring down a woman who had once navigated a senator out of a scandal that would have toppled the government. I picked up the check. I did not tear it up. I folded it neatly and placed it in my purse. Very well, I said. I hope the grand ballroom brings you everything you deserve, Bianca. I turned and walked away, the sound of my heels clicking sharply on the marble. As soon as I stepped out into the humid Atlanta air, I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number that was saved under simply the architect. It is Zara, I said. Activate Plan B, the vineyard property. Yes, the private island. And get me the file on the St. Regis management. I want to know who authorized this. Bianca wanted the ballroom. She could have it. I was about to stage a wedding that would make the St. Regis look like a motel. The humiliation did not stop at the venue. A week later, my mother insisted we go wedding dress shopping. Not for me, of course, for Bianca. But she demanded I come along because, as she put it, I had the same measurements as Bianca, but I was less important, so I could stand in as the mannequin while Bianca sipped champagne. We went to the Vera Wang boutique in Buckhead. The sales assistants fawned over Bianca, bringing her flute after flute of sparkling wine. My mother sat on the plush velvet sofa, criticizing everything I put on. 2 ruffles, she said as I stepped out in a mermaid gown. And honestly, Zara, that bright white, does not suit your complexion. It looks harsh against your skin. Bianca, honey, that ivory tone will make you look like an angel. I stood on the pedestal, looking at myself in the mirror. The dress was beautiful, but my mother's words cut deep. It was the same song she had sung my entire childhood. Bianca's lightness was a virtue. My darkness was a flaw to be managed. Bianca pointed a manicured finger at the gown I was wearing. I like that silhouette, actually. Zara, turn around. Yeah, that is the one. Take it off. I want to try it. I stepped down, the silk rustling around me. The sales associate, a kind woman named Zara, looked at me with pity. I hated that look. I did not want pity. I wanted retribution. After Bianca tried on the dress and decided it was the one, she gasped at the price tag. $20,000. She turned to me, her eyes wide and innocent. Zara, you have been saving up for your wedding for years, right? Since you are doing something small now, you surely have extra cash, my mother chimed in. That is a wonderful idea. Zara, think of it as a wedding gift for your sister. You know Liam's family expects perfection. We cannot have her walking down the aisle in something off the rack. You are the older sister. It is your duty to help. My duty. My duty was to pay for the dress that would be worn on the day she stole from me at the venue she bullied me out of. I looked at Bianca. She was smirking, certain I would say no so she could throw a tantrum or say yes and cripple myself financially. She thought I was broke. I will pay for it, I said. The room went quiet. Even Bianca looked surprised. Really, she asked. Yes. Consider it my final contribution to this wedding. I pulled out my card holder. I did not use my regular debit card. I pulled out a heavy black titanium card. It was an invite-only card issued to individuals who spent over $10 million a year. I had placed a simple black sticker over the logo to make it look generic, but the weight of it was unmistakable. I handed it to Zara. She took it and her eyebrows shot up when she felt the metal. She glanced at the name embossed on the back, then looked at me with wide eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, perhaps strictly forbidden, to accept this card without a manager, but I held a finger to my lips. Just run it, please, I whispered. My mother and Bianca were too busy celebrating to notice. You are a lifesaver, Zara, Bianca squealed. Although make sure you have enough left for your little party. I would hate for you to serve pizza. I walked out of that store $20,000 poorer, but I felt lighter. They had no idea. They were playing checkers while I was playing three-dimensional chess. The next phase of Bianca's campaign was the isolation. 2 months before the wedding, I started receiving awkward phone calls from my aunt's cousins and family friends. Zara, honey. Aunt Clara said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Uncle Joe and I are so torn. We really wanted to come to your celebration. But Bianca sent out these save the dates that imply the Sterlings are keeping track of loyalty. You know Joe is trying to get a loan from Sterling Bank for his car dealership. We just cannot risk offending them. It was the same story with my cousin Marcus, and even my childhood best friend Tasha. Bianca had issued an ultimatum. Anyone who attended my wedding would be blacklisted from the Sterling social circle. For a family obsessed with climbing the social ladder, the choice was obvious. They chose the proximity to power. I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by RSVP cards, all marked declined. My side of the guest list was empty. 0 family members, 0 old friends. Dante walked in carrying 2 takeout boxes of Thai food. He saw the pile of rejection cards and the tears I was refusing to shed. He sat down beside me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. Let them go, Zara, he said softly, kissing my temple. You are trying to water dead plants. These people do not love you. They love what you can do for them. And right now they think you can do nothing. It hurts, Dante. I admitted, my voice trembling. They are my blood. Blood is biology, he said. Loyalty is a choice. Look at this list. Who is left? I looked at the other pile, the yes pile. It was small but mighty. It contained names that would make my parents faint. A senator, a tech CEO, An award-winning journalist, people I had saved, people who knew the real Zara. You are right, I said, wiping my face. I stood up and grabbed the pile of declined cards. I walked to the shredder in the corner of my home office. One by one, I fed the names of my family into the machine. Aunt Clara, Uncle Joe, Cousin Marcus, even Tasha. As the machine buzzed and chewed through the paper, I felt the last tether to my need for their validation snap. Good, I said, watching the confetti fall into the bin. Less money on the open bar. The final straw came during a dinner meant to introduce Dante to Liam Sterling. My parents insisted on it, claiming we needed to bond, but I knew it was just another opportunity for them to fawn over Liam and belittle Dante. We met at a steakhouse in Buckhead. Liam arrived 20 minutes late wearing a suit that cost more than my father's car. He didn't apologize. He just sat down and ordered a bottle of scotch for the table without asking anyone else what they wanted. So Dante, Liam said, leaning back and swirling his glass. Bianca tells me you play the trumpet or something. Is there any money in that, or does Zara pay the bills? My father chuckled nervously. Oh, Dante does his best. We are proud of him for following his passion, even if it is not exactly lucrative. Dante smiled, calm and dangerous. The trumpet is my passion. But I do all right. I invest here and there. Invest? Liam laughed. What, in crypto? Look, man, if you need tips, just ask. My family runs the biggest private equity firm in the Southeast. We handle real wealth, not musician money. I saw Dante's jaw tighten. I decided to intervene. Actually, Liam, I said, cutting into my steak. I was reading about sterling equity in the journal this morning. Interesting move on the short position against those tech stocks. But aren't you worried about the SEC investigation into the derivative swaps? The table went silent. Liam froze. The investigation was a rumor, barely a whisper on Wall Street. It wasn't public knowledge yet. I knew about it because I was the one hired to manage the PR fallout if it leaked. Liam narrowed his eyes. Where did you hear that? I shrugged. I read a lot. Just curious. If the SEC freezes those assets, won't that impact your liquidity for the big events coming up? I was hinting at the wedding. Liam turned pale. He mumbled something about rumors and market volatility, then quickly changed the subject. But the dynamic had shifted. He looked at me with fear. He looked at Dante with suspicion. As we were leaving, Liam pulled my father aside loud enough for me to hear. Look, Marcus, keep the musician and the sister away from the wedding photos, okay? My mother, Eleanor, she is very particular. She does not like clutter. My father nodded vigorously. Of course, Liam. We will make sure they stay in the back, or maybe they can leave early. I walked out of that restaurant holding Dante's hand. They want us to leave early, I whispered to Dante as the valet brought his car, a beat-up Honda Civic we used to maintain our cover. Dante opened the door for me. Oh, baby. We are not leaving early. We are not even going to be there. I looked at him. I just got confirmation, Dante said, starting the engine. The helicopter is booked, the island is prepped, and I made a call to Eleanor Sterling's assistant. You did what? Dante smirked in the rearview mirror. Eleanor Sterling hates gold diggers, and she loves jazz. She is going to be at a wedding on October 15th, Zara. But it won't be Bianca's. I sat back watching the city lights blur past. The pieces were falling into place. My family thought they had exiled me to the shadows. They did not realize that the shadows were where I did my best work. October 15th was coming, and it wasn't going to be a wedding day. It was going to be Judgment Day. The envelope did not arrive by mail. It was not shoved into my mailbox alongside pizza coupons and credit card offers. Instead, it was delivered by a man in a charcoal suit who looked more like a Secret Service agent than a courier. He knocked on the door of my apartment at 7 in the morning, handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with wax, and left without saying a word. I stood in my doorway holding the heavy cardstock. My name was handwritten in calligraphy on the front. Zara Davis. No address. just my name. Inside, there was a single card with an embossed crest, a lion holding a key. The Sterling family crest. The message was brief. T, 3 p.m., the greenhouse at the Swan House. Come alone. It was signed simply Eleanor. My stomach twisted. Eleanor Sterling, the matriarch of the Sterling banking dynasty. The woman my sister Bianca was desperately trying to impress, but had never actually met in person without a chaperone. Bianca had spent the last 6 months curating her personality to match what she thought Eleanor wanted, reading books on etiquette and changing her wardrobe to muted pastels. And yet here I was, the black sheep, holding a private invitation. I showed the card to Dante. He was brewing coffee, shirtless, humming a jazz standard. He took the card, whistled low, and looked at me with a spark of amusement in his eyes. "Well," he said, leaning against the counter, "it seems the Queen Bee has summoned you. Be careful, Zara. Eleanor Sterling eats people like your sister for breakfast, but she respects power. Do not walk in there acting like a victim." I dressed with the precision of a soldier going into battle. I chose a tailored navy pantsuit, sharp and professional, with no jewelry except my engagement ring. I pulled my hair back into a sleek bun. I was not going there as Bianca's sister. I was going there as Zara Davis. The Swan House was a historic mansion in Buckhead, surrounded by gardens that looked like they belonged in a Jane Austen novel. The greenhouse was a private glass-enclosed tea room reserved for Atlanta's elite. When I arrived, the host didn't ask for my name. He simply nodded and led me through the tables of ladies who lunched straight to a secluded corner shaded by oversized ferns. Eleanor Sterling sat there like a statue carved from granite and diamonds. She was in her 60s, but her posture was razor sharp. She wore a Chanel tweed jacket that probably cost more than my parents' car, and her silver hair was cut in a severe chic bob. She didn't look up as I approached. She was busy stirring her tea, the spoon making no sound against the china. "Mrs. Sterling," I said, keeping my voice steady. She stopped stirring. She looked up and her eyes were terrifying. They were the same pale gray as Liam's, but where Liam's eyes were vacant and watery, hers were piercing. She evaluated me in a single second, scanning my shoes, my suit, my posture, and my face. "Sit down, Zara," she commanded. Her voice was low, raspy, and sounded like old money. I sat. I did not fidget. I placed my hands on my lap and waited. "Tea," she offered, pouring a cup from a silver pot without waiting for an answer. "It is Darjeeling. First flush. I assume you appreciate quality unlike the rest of your family." I took the cup. "Thank you. But I doubt you invited me here to discuss tea leaves." "Why am I here, Mrs. Sterling?" Eleanor smiled. It was a small, dangerous smile. "I like directness. It is a rare quality. Most people spend the first 10 minutes wasting my time with pleasantries. Your sister, for example, spent our entire first lunch talking about the weather and her hair care routine." I took a sip of tea. It was bitter and floral. "I am not my sister." "No, you certainly are not," Eleanor said. She reached into her Hermes bag and pulled out a manila folder. She slid it across the table toward me. I opened it. My breath caught in my throat. Inside were photos, not of me and Dante, but of me walking out of the Capitol building in D.C., me shaking hands with Senator Vance, me signing a non-disclosure agreement with the CEO of a tech giant during their data breach scandal last year. There were bank statements too, not my checking account, but the offshore holding company I used for my consultancy business. The balance at the bottom of the page had 7 zeros. "You are quite the mystery, Zara Davis," Eleanor said, leaning back in her chair. "To your parents, you are the disappointment, the struggling freelancer, the daughter who could not catch a rich husband. But to the political elite in Washington, you are the ghost fixer, the woman who makes problems disappear before the press even catches wind of them." I closed the folder. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but I forced my face to remain impassive. I valued my anonymity above everything. "How did she find this?" "You dug deep," I said. I protect my investments, Eleanor replied. When my son told me he was marrying a Davis, I had my security team run a background check on the entire family. Imagine my surprise when the background check on the golden child Bianca came up with nothing but maxed out credit cards and a fake degree from a community college. And then imagine my shock when the background check on the black sheep revealed a crisis management empire. She took a sip of her tea, her eyes locking onto mine. You are brilliant, Zara. You have built a fortune without anyone handing you a dime. You navigate shark-infested waters for a living. So tell me, why do you let your foolish parents and that vapid sister treat you like a doormat? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was the question I had asked myself 1,000 times. Because they are family, I whispered, the defense sounding weak even to my own ears. Eleanor scoffed. Family is not about blood, my dear. That is a lie poor people tell themselves to tolerate abuse. Family is about legacy, competence, loyalty. Your parents have none of those things. They are parasites. And your sister? She is a decorative object, expensive to maintain but ultimately hollow. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I detest this wedding, Zara. I detest the idea of my son, who is already weak-minded and easily manipulated, marrying a woman who only wants him for the sterling name. Bianca does not love Liam. She loves the idea of being Mrs. Liam's sterling. She loves the country club membership she thinks she is going to get. Then stop it, I said. You are Eleanor's sterling. One word from you and Liam would call it off. Eleanor shook her head. If I forbid it, Liam will rebel. He is in that phase where he thinks defying mommy makes him a man. If I stop the wedding, he will elope with her, and I will be the villain forever. No, he needs to see her for what she is. He needs to see your family for what they are. He needs a hard lesson. She reached out and tapped the folder. And I think you are the one to teach him. I looked at her, confusion warring with curiosity. What are you proposing I know about the venue? Eleanor said calmly. I know Bianca used my name to bully the St. Regis into canceling your contract. I know your parents are forcing you to pay for her dress. I know they have isolated you from every relative you have. I felt a flush of shame. You know everything. I do, she nodded. And it disgusts me. Not you. Them. I despise bullies, Zara. But more than that, I despise incompetence. Bianca is playing a game she is not equipped to win. She thinks she has won because she stole your date and your venue. She thinks she has secured the sterling alliance. Eleanor paused, her eyes glittering. I want to offer you an alliance instead. I blinked. You want to align with me? Against your own son's wedding, I want to align with competence, Eleanor corrected. Here is my offer. I will pull the strings necessary to ensure your plan B is perfect. I have connections in Martha's Vineyard that even you do not have. I will make sure your wedding is the event of the decade. In exchange, you do not warn Liam. You do not warn Bianca. You let them proceed with their charade. You let them believe they have won. And then I asked. And then on October 15th, we crush them. Eleanor said, a cruel smile touching her lips. We show Liam that he chose the wrong sister. We show your parents that they bet on the wrong horse. I stared at this woman. She was terrifying. She was ruthless. She was exactly the kind of mother I had always wished I had. Someone who protected her legacy, yes, but someone who recognized strength. My own mother would sell me for a discount handbag. Eleanor Sterling was offering to go to war for me because she respected my hustle. Why, I asked one last time, why go this far? Because I am tired of fake people, Zara. And I am tired of my son being a fool. He needs to hit rock bottom before he can grow up. Losing Bianca at the altar of public opinion will be his rock bottom. She extended her hand across the table. Her skin was cool and dry. Do we have a deal? She asked. I looked at her hand. Taking it meant declaring total war on my family. It meant there was no going back. No more reconciling, no more playing nice. It meant destroying Bianca's dream to build my own. I thought about the smirk on Bianca's face when she took my venue. I thought about my father telling me to act like a servant at the engagement party. I thought about Dante, who had been disrespected by Liam. I took Eleanor's hand. "We have a deal." "Excellent," Eleanor said, signaling for the check. "One more thing, Zara." "Yes, Bianca has been telling everyone that the entire Sterling Board of Directors and I will be in the front row at the St. Regis on October 15th. She has built her entire social standing on my attendance." I nodded. "I know. It is all she talks about." Eleanor stood up, smoothing her tweed skirt. She looked down at me, and for the first time her expression softened. It wasn't pity. It was pride. "Well, she can keep talking. Because I will not be at the St. Regis. I do not attend circuses." She put on her oversized sunglasses, hiding those piercing gray eyes. "Send me the coordinates for your island, Zara. I will be at your wedding. And I am bringing the entire Sterling Empire with me." She walked away without looking back, leaving me alone in the greenhouse. I sat there for a long time, watching the steam rise from my tea. For the first time in my life, the weight on my chest lifted. I wasn't the outcast anymore. I was the chosen one. And my family had no idea that the very prize they were chasing, the Sterling approval, was sitting right here, drinking Darjeeling with me. I pulled out my phone and texted Dante. "Pack your tuxedo. We just got the ultimate upgrade." The game had changed. Bianca thought she was stealing my wedding day. She didn't realize she was setting the stage for her own execution. And the executioner was her own mother-in-law. Miami in July is not just hot. It is aggressive. The humidity wraps around you like a wet wool blanket, suffocating and heavy. But the heat outside was nothing compared to the stifling atmosphere inside the stretch Hummer limousine Bianca had rented for her bachelorette weekend. We were heading to South Beach. Inside the limo sat Bianca and her bridal squad, a group of 4 women who looked like they had been manufactured in a factory that specialized in spray tans and vocal fry. There was Tiffany, Courtney, Jessica, and Ashley. All white, all wealthy, and all convinced that the world existed solely to serve them. And then there was me. I was squeezed into the corner seat near the ice bucket, clutching my professional-grade camera bag. I was not there as a bridesmaid. I was not even there as a sister. According to the itinerary Bianca had emailed me, my official title for the weekend was Director of Logistics and Photography. In plain English, that meant I was the mule. "Zara, move your leg," Tiffany snapped, adjusting her sequined mini dress. "You are wrinkling my train." I shifted my leg, pressing it against the sharp edge of the cooler. "Sorry." Bianca laughed, pouring another glass of cheap champagne. "Don't worry about her, Tiff. Zara is used to taking up small spaces." "Right, Zara." I didn't answer. I just checked the lens cap on my camera. My mother had made it very clear why I was here. "You are going to Miami to make sure your sister looks perfect," she had ordered. "No scandals, no bad angles. And for God's sake, keep her hydrated. We cannot have her looking puffy for the wedding." We arrived at the One Hotel South Beach, a sanctuary of reclaimed wood and organic cotton sheets that cost more per night than most people made in a month. Bianca had booked the presidential suite for herself and the girls. I naturally was sleeping on the pull-out sofa in the living room. As soon as we got to the room, the demands started. "Zara, steam my dress." "Zara, call the club and make sure we have the table right next to the DJ." "Zara, go down to the lobby and get 5 iced lattes with oat milk, 2 pumps of vanilla sugar-free." I ran around like a servant, my blood boiling beneath my skin. Every time I wanted to scream, I touched the small velvet box hidden deep in my backpack. It contained the earrings Eleanor Sterling had given me before I left. "Keep your eyes on the prize," she had told me. "Let them dig their own graves." By 10 p.m. we were at Live, the most exclusive nightclub in the city. The bass was so loud it vibrated in my teeth. Bianca had insisted on a VIP table, which meant we were roped off from the commoners, perched on leather banquettes overlooking the dance floor. I spent the first hour on my feet snapping photos. "Get the lighting right, Zara." Bianca screamed over the music, posing with a bottle of Grey Goose. I need to look skinny. Make sure you get my good side, Courtney yelled, shoving her hip into Bianca's. I took hundreds of photos. I documented every pout, every toast, every fake laugh. I was invisible to them, a piece of equipment with a pulse. Around midnight, the girls sat down to rest their feet. I finally found a small spot on the edge of the sofa to sit. I was exhausted. The humidity had wreaked havoc on my hair. I wore it natural in a full dark halo that framed my face. I loved my hair. It was a symbol of my heritage, my resistance, and my pride. Tiffany turned to me. Her eyes glazed over from too much vodka. She reached out a hand. Can I touch it? She asked, her fingers already inches from my scalp. I recoiled, leaning back. No. Please do not touch my hair. Tiffany pouted, looking at the other girls. God, she is so touchy. I just wanted to see if it feels like, wool. The table erupted in giggles. My stomach dropped. It was not just an insult. It was a microaggression so sharp it felt like a paper cut on my soul. I looked at Bianca. My sister. The girl who shared my DNA, if not my complexion. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to tell her friend that comparing her sister's hair to wool was racist and unacceptable. Bianca rolled her eyes. She took a sip of her drink and looked at me with disdain. Oh, Zara, lighten up, she said. It is just a joke. You always have to make everything so political. This is why nobody likes hanging out with you. You bring the vibe down. Why don't you go get us some more mixers? We are out of cranberry juice. I stared at her. The music faded into a dull thrum in the background. In that moment, the last tiny shred of sisterly love I held for her withered and died. She did not just want to be accepted by these women. She was willing to offer me up as a sacrifice to earn their approval. I stood up slowly. I did not say a word. I walked to the bar, but I did not get cranberry juice. I ordered a double shot of tequila, drank it straight, and walked back to the table. When I returned, the vibe had shifted. The girls were whispering, huddled together. When they saw me, they plastered fake smiles on their faces. Hey, Zara, Jessica chirped. We decided to go dance on the floor. The DJ is playing our song. Yeah, you stay here and watch the bags, Bianca said, grabbing her clutch. And settle up with the waiter. Okay, Mom said. You have some savings from that little writing gig of yours. Consider it your gift to me, since you didn't plan a party or anything. Before I could respond, they were gone. 5 shimmering figures disappearing into the strobe lights, and the crowd leaving me alone at a table covered in empty bottles and half-eaten fruit platters. A massive security guard stepped up to the table, followed by a waiter holding a leather folder. Check, Miss, the waiter said, dropping the folder on the table. I opened it. My eyes scanned the total. $5,400. They had ordered 3 bottles of Ace of Spades champagne, 2 bottles of Grey Goose, and a seafood tower they hadn't even touched. $5,000. I looked at the dance floor. I could see Bianca laughing, her head thrown back, living her best life on my dime. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew I wouldn't cause a scene in a club like this. She knew I would pay to save face, to protect the family reputation she claimed to care so much about. I pulled out my phone. I could have called my mother, but she would just yell at me for being cheap. I could have walked out, but the bouncer was blocking the exit. I pulled out my black card, the one that was linked to my offshore account. The waiter raised an eyebrow when he saw it, his attitude instantly shifting from annoyance to respect. I paid the bill. I added a 20% tip because it wasn't the waiter's fault my sister was a monster. As I signed the receipt, my hand shook. Not from fear, from rage, cold, hard rage. I grabbed my camera bag and left. I didn't wait for them. I took an Uber back to the hotel, dragged my suitcase into the hallway, and booked myself a room at the Mandarin Oriental down the street. I was done sleeping on sofas. Once I was in my own room, surrounded by silence and air conditioning, I called Dante. It was 2 a.m., but he answered on the first ring. Hey, baby. His voice was rough with sleep but warm. You okay? You sound tight. I told him everything. I told him about the hair comment. I told him about Bianca laughing. I told him about the $5,000 bar tab I had just paid. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Dante finally spoke, his voice was terrifyingly calm. She left you with the bill, he asked. Yes, I said, looking out at the ocean. She said Mom told her I had savings. She thinks I am broke, Dante, but she still bleeds me dry because she thinks I am weak. She is going to learn today, Dante said. Listen to me, Zara. Do you remember that credit card Bianca is so proud of, the platinum one she uses to book her flights and buy those ugly purses? Yes, I said. She brags about it constantly. She says it is from some exclusive boutique bank Liam introduced her to. Dante chuckled a dark, low sound. Liam didn't introduce her to it. Liam's credit is shot. I approved that card. I sat up straight. What? My private equity firm owns a stake in that fintech startup, Dante explained. We issue high-risk credit lines to people who want to look rich but have no liquidity. Bianca is one of our special clients. We keep her limit high because she pays the minimums, but technically, the terms of service allow us to freeze the asset if we suspect unusual activity. Unusual activity, I asked. Like, say, reckless spending in Miami without authorized collateral, Dante said. Or maybe just because the chairman of the board feels like it. Dante, are you saying you can cut her off? I am saying I am logging into the admin portal right now, he said. I can hear the clicking of his keyboard. Okay, here is her file. Bianca Davis. Credit limit 50,000. Current balance 42,000. Wow, she really likes Gucci. Do it, I whispered. Status changed, Dante said. Account frozen. Reason suspected fraud. What happens when she tries to use it? I asked, a smile finally touching my lips. It will decline, Dante said. Hard decline. And since it is a weekend, customer service will be closed until Monday morning. She is stranded in Miami with zero access to funds. I lay back on the pillows, imagining the scene at brunch tomorrow. Thank you, I said. Anything for you, Queen Dante replied. Now get some sleep. You have a show to watch tomorrow. The next morning, I did not go to the brunch. I sat in my hotel room, ordered room service, and watched my phone. At 11:30 a.m., the texts started rolling in. First from Bianca. Where are you? We are at the restaurant and the waiter is waiting for our order. Then 5 minutes later, Zara picked up the phone. Then 10 minutes later, a voicemail. I played it on speaker. Zara, you selfish... My card isn't working. It says declined. I tried Tiffany's card, but she is maxed out and Courtney forgot her wallet. We are stuck at the restaurant and the manager is threatening to call the police if we don't pay for the mimosas. Get your ass down here and pay for this. Mom is going to kill you. I took a bite of my eggs Benedict. It was delicious. I typed a reply slowly. Hey sis, so sorry. I had a family emergency and had to fly back to Atlanta early. I am already on the plane. Phone's about to turn off. Maybe try washing dishes. Love you. I turned off my phone. I poured myself a cup of coffee and watched the waves crash against the shore. Bianca was currently experiencing a very small taste of what her life was about to become. She was stranded broke and realizing that her rich friends were just as hollow as she was. But this was just the appetizer. The main course was coming on October 15th, and unlike brunch, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. For the first time in years, I enjoyed my vacation. I spent the rest of the day at the spa, charging everything to my own black card, the one that never declined. Let them panic. Let them sweat. The bill always comes due eventually. And for the Davis family, the interest rates were about to skyrocket. The rehearsal was a farce designed solely to keep up appearances. I had rented a small, dusty chapel on the outskirts of Atlanta for the evening, fully aware that I would never actually walk down its aisle. This was part of the theater, a necessary act in the long con I was playing against my own flesh and blood. My parents and Bianca believed this run-down building with its peeling paint and smell of stale incense was the best I could afford. They stood in the parking lot swatting away mosquitoes and checking their watches with exaggerated impatience. Bianca was glowing, but not with sisterly affection. She was radiating the smug satisfaction of someone who believes she has already won the war. She wore a white cocktail dress that was completely inappropriate for a rehearsal that was not her own, but nobody said a word. My mother was too busy adjusting Bianca's hemline, and my father was too busy scrolling through his phone, likely checking stock prices he did not actually own shares in. "Where is the groom?" my father asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "We have been standing here for 20 minutes, Zara. This is disrespectful." "He is on his way," I said, clutching my phone. I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside I was worrying. Dante was never late. Punctuality was a religion to him. In his world of high-stakes business deals and live jazz performances, timing was everything. Suddenly my phone buzzed. It was Dante. I answered immediately. "Baby, are you okay?" "I am fine," Dante said, his voice calm but tight. "But the Honda is not." I came out to the parking lot and found all 4 tires slashed. "And there is sugar in the gas tank. The engine is dead." My blood ran cold. This was not an accident. This was a targeted attack. We parked that beat-up Honda in a secure garage near his office specifically to maintain our cover. Only a few people knew where it was. I looked up at Bianca. She was not looking at me. She was looking at her phone, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips. She typed a quick message and then slipped the phone back into her designer clutch. The timing was too perfect. She knew Dante would be driving that car tonight. She knew exactly how to humiliate him. "Someone slashed his tires," I announced to the group, watching Bianca's reaction closely. My mother let out a loud, dramatic sigh. "Oh, for heaven's sake." Slashed tires. Really, Zara? That sounds like the kind of trouble that follows a certain type of person. Are you sure he didn't just forget? Or maybe he couldn't get the car started because he hasn't paid for repairs? "It was vandalism, Mom," I said sharply. "He is calling a tow truck." "Well, we cannot wait all night," my father snapped. "The Sterlings are expecting us for drinks at 9. If your fiancé cannot manage the basic responsibility of maintaining a vehicle, perhaps he is not ready for marriage." Bianca chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You know, Zara, Liam says that reliability is the most important trait in a man. Maybe this is a sign. I mean, if he can't even get to the rehearsal, how is he going to support a family? Maybe you should just call it off. We can still make it to the drinks with the Sterlings if we leave now." The audacity took my breath away. She had paid someone to destroy my fiancé's property, and now she was using the result of her crime to question his character. It was gaslighting in its purest, most toxic form. "He will be here," I said, my voice hard. "We wait." We waited another 20 minutes. The sun began to set, casting long, jagged shadows across the cracked pavement of the parking lot. My parents complained about the heat. They complained about the neighborhood. They complained about the bugs. Every word was a subtle jab at my life choices, a reminder that I had chosen the wrong path, the wrong man, the wrong life. Bianca leaned against my father's luxury sedan, looking bored. She checked her makeup in the side mirror. "I bet he is not coming," she whispered to my mother, loud enough for me to hear. "He is probably embarrassed. I would be too if I had to marry into a family like ours with nothing to offer." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that Dante could buy this entire city block without checking his bank balance. But I held my tongue. The payoff would be sweeter if I waited. Then we heard it. It was a low, powerful rumble like a beast waking up. It was not the sputtering cough of a tow truck or the whine of a taxi. It was the deep, throaty purr of a V12 engine. My father looked up from his phone. My mother stopped fanning herself. Bianca froze mid-selfie. Rounding the corner was not a taxi. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom. But not just any Phantom. It was a custom two-tone model in midnight blue and silver shimmering under the streetlights like a moving diamond. The car moved with a grace that defied its size, gliding over the potholes of the parking lot as if they didn't exist. The windows were tinted pitch black. The massive chrome grille gleamed like the gates of heaven. The spirit of ecstasy ornament on the hood stood proud and defiant. "Who on earth is that?" my mother whispered, clutching her pearls. The car slowed to a stop right in front of us. The silence in the parking lot was absolute. Even the crickets seemed to stop chirping out of respect for the machinery. The driver's door did not open. Instead, the rear suicide door swung open automatically. A polished black shoe stepped out onto the pavement, then a leg in tailored charcoal trousers. Dante emerged from the back seat. He looked immaculate. He was wearing a suit that I knew cost more than Bianca's entire wedding budget, though to my parents it probably just looked like a nice suit. He adjusted his cufflinks, his expression unbothered, cool, and utterly commanding. He walked over to me and kissed me on the cheek, ignoring the stunned faces of my family. "Sorry I am late, love," he said, his voice smooth as velvet. "The tow truck took forever. I had to make a few calls to get a ride." My father's mouth was hanging open. He stared at the car, then at Dante, then back at the car. He knew cars. He knew that vehicle started at $500,000. He knew you didn't just hail a Rolls-Royce on Uber. "Is that yours?" Bianca stammered, her mask of superiority cracking for the first time all night. Dante laughed, a light dismissive sound. "This old thing, no. It belongs to a friend. When my car went down, the rental agency was all out of standard sedans. They called in a favor from a local partner. It was the only thing available on short notice." He lied so effortlessly. He was protecting the secret, playing the role of the lucky pauper. But I saw the panic in Bianca's eyes. She had paid to sabotage a Honda, and in doing so, she had forced Dante to reveal a glimpse of his true power, even if he played it off as luck. "A rental?" My father repeated, the color returning to his face. He let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "Of course. It is a rental." He walked over to the car and kicked the tire, gently shaking his head. "You know, Dante, in my world, we don't try to impress people with things we don't own. It is a bit tacky to show up in a car you can't afford to put gas in, don't you think?" My mother nodded in agreement, relieved that the universe made sense again. "Oh, absolutely. It is very rapper chic, very new money. Or rather, no money pretending to be new money." Bianca let out a breath she had been holding. She laughed, a shrill, nervous sound. "Oh my God, for a second I thought you actually won the lottery or something. But yeah, rental makes sense. Did you spend your entire paycheck on the deposit? Do we need to chip in so you can return it without a penalty fee?" Dante smiled at them. It was the smile of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. "No need, Bianca. The deposit is covered. Shall we go inside? I believe we have a rehearsal to get through." We walked into the chapel. The rehearsal was a blur. I went through the motions, walking down the aisle, holding Dante's hand, reciting the vows I would never say in this building. But my mind was not on the ceremony. It was on the look in Bianca's eyes when that car pulled up. For a split second, she had been terrified. She had sensed the truth. But her arrogance was too strong. She had rationalized it away instantly. She preferred to believe her own narrative that we were broke, desperate, and pathetic rather than trust the evidence of her own eyes. As we walked back to the parking lot after the rehearsal, the Rolls-Royce was still waiting, the driver standing stoically by the door. My father stopped Dante one last time. He placed a patronizing hand on Dante's shoulder. "Look, son," my father said, puffing out his chest. "I know you want to look good for Zara, but don't start your marriage in debt just to rent a fancy toy for an hour. It is embarrassing. You can't fake class with a rental car." Dante looked at my father's hand on his shoulder. He removed it gently but firmly. "I will keep that in mind, Marcus," Dante said. My father turned to me. "You see, Zara? This is what I was worried about. Flashy exterior, hollow interior. A rented luxury is still fake, just like this wedding." He got into his sedan with my mother and Bianca. As they drove away, Bianca rolled down the window and yelled, "Try not to scratch it, Dante. You can't afford the insurance." I watched their taillights disappear into the darkness. I turned to Dante. "They really believe it," I said, amazed. "They really believe it is a rental." Dante opened the door of the Phantom for me. The interior smelled of handcrafted leather and cedar wood. "Let them believe," he whispered, kissing my forehead. "It makes the fall so much harder." As we drove away, gliding through the night in the silence of the cabin, I looked at the partition separating us from the driver. I knew that tomorrow was the breaking point. The sabotage was the final straw. Bianca had tried to strand us. My father had called my life fake. They had no idea that the only fake thing about tonight was the rehearsal itself. The car was real, the money was real, and the retribution that was coming for them, that was going to be the most real thing they had ever experienced. I rested my head on Dante's shoulder. "Plan C," I said softly. Dante nodded. Plan C. Plan C was simple. Total annihilation. No more warnings. No more hiding. Tomorrow, I would cut the cord, and I would leave them drifting in the open ocean without a life raft. The night before my wedding was supposed to be filled with anticipation and joy. It was supposed to be the time when a bride sits with her mother, perhaps drinking a glass of wine, laughing over old memories, and sharing quiet whispers of advice for the journey ahead. I was sitting alone in the living room of our temporary apartment, staring at the garment bag that held my $100,000 wedding dress. The room was dark, lit only by the amber glow of the streetlights outside filtering through the blinds. Dante was in the shower, the sound of running water providing a white noise that barely drowned out the chaotic thoughts swirling in my head. I had spent the day finalizing the logistics for the island. The helicopters were fueled. The private chefs had prepped the menu. Eleanor Sterling had confirmed that the entire board of directors had landed safely at the private airstrip. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready for the grand reveal that would shatter my family's delusions. But inside, a small, foolish part of me was still a little girl waiting for her daddy to come home. I looked at my phone sitting on the coffee table. It had been silent all evening. No texts from my mother asking if I was nervous. No call from Bianca wishing me luck, even sarcastically. Silence. And then, at 9:45 p.m., the screen lit up. Dad. My heart hammered against my ribs. A wave of irrational hope washed over me. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe in the quiet of the night he had realized that he had 2 daughters getting married tomorrow, not just one. Maybe he wanted to tell me that despite everything, despite the venue drama and the dress money and the insults, he loved me. I picked up the phone. My hand was trembling slightly. "Hello," I said, my voice soft. "Zara." "Thank God you picked up," my father said. His voice was breathless, frantic. "We have a crisis." I sat up straighter. "Is everyone okay? Is Mom okay?" "No, nobody is okay," he snapped, the stress vibrating through the speaker. The bartending service for Bianca's reception just canceled. Apparently, Bianca yelled at the manager during the site visit yesterday and told him his staff looked like convicts. They pulled the contract an hour ago. We have 300 guests coming to the St. Regis tomorrow, and nobody to pour the champagne. I closed my eyes. Of course. It was not an apology. It was a logistical problem caused by Bianca's arrogance. "That sounds terrible, Dad," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "But I am sure Mr. Henderson at the hotel can pull some staff from the hotel bar to cover it." "They are fully booked with a convention," Dad shouted. "Look, Zara, we don't have time to argue. I need you to come over to the hotel tomorrow morning. Bring Dante. I know he has friends in the service industry. We need you to manage the bar." I froze. The air in the room seemed to vanish. "Excuse me," I whispered. "You have your bartending license, don't you?" "You got it in college when you were going through that rebellion phase," my father said, dismissing my entire university experience as a phase. "We need you to run the bar, Zara. We need someone we can trust to handle the premium liquor so the staff doesn't steal it." "Dad." I said, my voice shaking. Tomorrow is October 15th. I know what date it is, Zara, he yelled. That is why I am calling you. I am getting married tomorrow, I said. I said the words slowly, clearly hoping they would penetrate the wall of narcissism he had built around himself. My wedding is tomorrow, at noon. I cannot bartend for Bianca because I will be standing at my own altar. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long, heavy silence. Then my father let out a sigh that sounded like he was dealing with a petulant toddler. Zara, please. Let's be realistic for 1 second. Realistic, I asked. Yes, realistic, he said, his voice dropping to a patronizing tone that made my skin crawl. You are having a little backyard thing with Dante. What are you doing? Ordering pizza? Playing music from a Bluetooth speaker? It is not a formal event, Zara. It is a hangout. You can push it back a few hours, or do it on Sunday. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I could feel the tears pricking my eyes, hot and stinging. You want me to cancel my wedding? I said, to serve drinks at Bianca's. I am asking you to prioritize the family, he exploded. This isn't just a party, Zara. This is the Sterlings. This is our future. If this wedding goes wrong, if the service is bad, we look like amateurs. We look like trash. Do you want to ruin this for your sister? Do you want to ruin this for me? For you, I thought. It was always for him, his image, his ego. Dad, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I have guests coming. I have a venue. Oh, stop it, he cut me off. Nobody important is coming to your wedding, Zara. Who is going to be there? Your college roommate, Dante's drummer. Nobody cares. The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Nobody cares. Listen to me, he continued, his voice hard and cold. You have been an embarrassment to this family for years with your little freelance jobs and your refusal to fit in. This is your chance to finally be useful. Don't embarrass us tomorrow by clinging to this delusion that your wedding matters. Cancel it. Come to the St. Regis at 10 a.m. Wear black pants and a white shirt. And bring Dante. We need him to carry the ice. The line went silent, waiting for my submission. Waiting for the good little scapegoat to say yes, to apologize for existing, to fold herself into a small box so her sister could shine. I looked at the garment bag in the corner. I thought about the island. I thought about Eleanor Sterling. I thought about the millions of dollars in my bank account that could buy and sell my father 10 times over. But mostly, I thought about the little girl who used to wait by the window for her dad to come home, hoping he would bring her a candy bar, only to watch him walk past her to hug Bianca. That little girl died in that moment. I did not scream. I did not curse. A strange, icy calm settled over me. It was the numbness of a severed limb. No, I said. What did you say? He asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. I said no, I repeated. I will not be there, Dad. I will be at my wedding. And if you think mine is an embarrassment, wait until you see what happens at yours. I did not wait for his response. I pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red button. The call ended. The connection was broken. But I wasn't done. I went into my contacts. I found the entry for Dad. I scrolled down to the bottom. Block caller. I pressed it. A small pop-up asked me to confirm. I pressed yes. Then I went to Mom. Block caller, confirm. Then Bianca. Block caller, confirm. Then Aunt Clara, Uncle Joe, Cousin Marcus. I went down the list like an executioner, severing every digital tie that bound me to the people who had spent 32 years making me feel small. With every tap of my finger, I felt a physical weight lift off my shoulders, replaced by a terrifying, exhilarating lightness. I was an orphan now, by choice. The bathroom door opened. Dante walked out, a towel wrapped around his waist, steam billowing behind him. He looked at me and his smile faded instantly. He saw the phone in my hand. He saw the tears streaming silently down my face. He saw the way my body was shaking, vibrating with the aftershocks of the trauma. Zara, he said, his voice laced with panic. He crossed the room in 2 strides. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask who called. He knew. He dropped to his knees in front of the sofa and pulled me into his arms. I buried my face in his chest. The smell of his soap, clean and earthy, filled my nose. And I broke. I didn't cry because I was weak. I didn't cry because I missed them. I cried for the loss of the hope I hadn't realized I was still holding on to. I cried because I had finally accepted that they were never going to change. They were never going to see me. They were never going to love me the way I deserved. He asked me to serve drinks. I sobbed into Dante's skin. He told me to cancel our wedding to serve drinks for Bianca. He said nobody cares about us. Dante's arms tightened around me. I could feel his muscles tense, his heart rate picking up. I felt his rage radiating off him like heat from a furnace, but his hands on my back were gentle. "Shh," he whispered, stroking my hair. "Let it out. Cry it all out, baby. Leave it all here. Leave all the pain in this room. Because you are not taking it with you tomorrow." He held me while I wept, rocking me back and forth. He let me grieve the family I was born into, so that I could fully embrace the family I had chosen. "They are fools," Dante whispered fiercely. "They are absolute fools. They are throwing away a diamond to hoard broken glass. But that is over now. You hear me? It is over." I nodded against his chest, my tears soaking his skin. After a long time, the sobbing subsided. My breathing slowed. The crushing weight in my chest began to dissolve, replaced by something harder, something sharper. I pulled back and looked at Dante. His eyes were dark, filled with a protective fury that made me feel safer than I had ever felt in my life. He reached up and wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "You are Zara Davis," he said, his voice low and intense. "You act as a shield for the most powerful people in the world. You are brilliant. You are beautiful. And you are mine. Tomorrow you are going to walk down an aisle covered in petals flown in from Ecuador. You are going to wear a crown of diamonds, and you are going to be surrounded by people who would walk through fire for you." He kissed my forehead. "Do not let them steal one more second of your peace." I took a deep breath. The air felt different now. It felt cleaner. I stood up. I walked to the mirror hanging on the wall. My eyes were red. My face was blotchy. But behind the puffiness there was steel. I went to the bathroom and washed my face with cold water. I scrubbed away the tears. I scrubbed away the daughter who just wanted to be good enough. When I walked back into the living room, Dante was standing by the window looking out at the city skyline. "Is it done?" he asked without turning around. "It is done," I said. "I blocked them all." Dante turned. A slow, wolfish smile spread across his face. "Good," he said. I walked over to the garment bag. I unzipped it just an inch, catching a glimpse of the silk inside. "Dad said my wedding would be an embarrassment." I said, my voice steady and cold. "He said it would be poor." Dante laughed, a short, sharp sound. "He has no idea," Dante said. I looked at my phone one last time. It was just a piece of glass and metal now. It could no longer hurt me. "Tomorrow," I said, turning off the lights in the room. "Tomorrow they find out they are not the main characters in this story." I took Dante's hand and led him toward the bedroom. The grief was gone. In its place was a focused, burning anticipation. "Tomorrow," I whispered into the dark, "they will know what hell looks like. And it is going to look exactly like an empty ballroom." October 15th dawned over Atlanta with a sky the color of bruised peaches. The humidity was already rising, clinging to the glass windows of the skyscrapers like a second skin. For most of the city, it was just another humid Tuesday. But for the Davis family, it was the day the world was supposed to stop and pay attention. I woke up at 6 in the morning, not to the sound of an alarm, but to the gentle rhythmic hum of a white noise machine in the presidential suite of the Mandarin Oriental. The room smelled of eucalyptus and fresh linen. I stretched my limbs against the 1,000-thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets, feeling a sense of peace so profound it almost felt illicit. Across town at the St. Regis, my sister was waking up to a very different reality. I knew this because Dante was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding his iPad, watching a live stream from the security cameras he had legally installed in the hallway outside Bianca's bridal suite. The feed didn't have audio, but the body language was loud enough. My mother was already pacing the hallway in her silk robe, her hair in rollers, gesturing wildly at a terrified hotel staff member. My father was leaning against the wall, looking gray and defeated. "It has begun," Dante whispered, handing me a glass of warm lemon water. I sat up and took the glass. "Tell me." "Valencia canceled," Dante said, a wicked smirk playing on his lips. I let out a soft laugh. Valencia was the most sought-after makeup artist in Atlanta. She charged $2,000 for a bridal consultation and required a 6-month booking notice. Bianca had bragged endlessly about securing her, claiming it was proof of her superior taste. What Bianca did not know was that Valencia had a strict policy regarding payment. She required the final balance to be paid 24 hours before the event. And since Bianca's primary credit card was frozen, and her backup cards were maxed out from the Miami disaster, the automatic payment had bounced at midnight. I picked up my phone, which was still in airplane mode, and turned on the Wi-Fi just to check my email. There it was. A confirmation receipt from Valencia's agency. Subject: private booking for Ms. Zara Davis. Location: Mandarin Oriental. Time: 7:00 a.m. Status: paid in full. I had not just caused Valencia to cancel on Bianca. I had hired her for myself. I imagined the scene inside Bianca's room. The panic. The frantic phone calls. My mother screaming that it was unprofessional, unaware that her daughter's insolvency was the cause. They would be forced to scramble, probably dragging in a cousin who watched YouTube tutorials, or a mall kiosk artist with a heavy hand. Bianca would walk down the aisle looking like a clown, while I would look like a queen. I got out of bed and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city looked small from up here. "Come on," Dante said, standing up. "Your glam squad is waiting." The next 3 hours were a blur of luxury. Valencia arrived with her team, and when she saw me, she didn't ask questions about why she was doing the bride's sister instead of the bride. She simply opened her kit and went to work. "Your skin is dehydrated," she noted, applying a cooling serum. "Stress." I smiled, closing my eyes as her brushes swept across my face. "No. Detox. I am flushing out a lifetime of toxins." While I was being pampered, my phone, which I had unblocked just for Dante's updates, started vibrating with the predictable, frantic energy of my family. I didn't answer, but I let the voicemails roll in, playing them on speaker for entertainment while I got my pedicure. First came my mother. Her voice was an octave higher than usual. "Zara, where are you? We need you here now. The makeup artist bailed on us. You need to do Bianca's makeup. You are good at that natural look. Get over here and bring your foundation." Bianca ran out. Then came my father. "Zara, the bartenders are not here. The agency said the check bounced. You need to bring cash and bring Dante. We need bodies behind the bar." I sipped my mimosa and let the messages fade into the background. They were still treating me like the help. Even on the morning of their catastrophe, their first instinct was not to ask for help, but to demand servitude. By 10 o'clock, the atmosphere in my suite was serene. I slipped into my robe and moved to the living area where breakfast was served. Smoked salmon, caviar, fresh fruit. Dante was already dressed in his tuxedo, looking devastatingly handsome. He adjusted his cufflinks and nodded at the television screen. "You might want to see this," he said. He had switched the feed to the St. Regis lobby camera. It was chaos. Guests were arriving early, confused by the lack of signage. The floral arrangements, which were supposed to be elaborate arches of white roses, looked sparse and wilting. Apparently, the florist had also encountered payment issues and had delivered the budget package instead of the premium one. But the real show was happening upstairs. Dante switched back to the hallway view. Bianca was standing in the corridor wrapped in a sheet screaming at my mother. I could read her lips. It doesn't fit. I leaned closer. The dress. The $20,000 Vera Wang gown I had paid for. The one she had insisted on taking in an inch because she planned to lose weight before the wedding. Instead, stress eating and alcohol bloating from the Miami trip had done the opposite. My mother was tugging at the back of the dress, her face red with exertion. I watched as she planted her foot against Bianca's back, pulling the zipper with all her might. Bianca was crying, her face blotchy and red, a disaster for her makeup, which was already looking heavy and amateurish. Suddenly on the screen, my mother stumbled back. Bianca threw her hands up. The zipper had popped. I gasped, then covered my mouth to stifle a laugh. It was cruel, yes, but it was poetic justice. The dress I had paid for, the dress she had stolen the experience of, had rejected her. She is going to have to safety pin it, Dante observed dryly. That is going to look great in the photos. At 11 o'clock, a chime sounded at my door. It was time. I walked into the bedroom where my dress was waiting. It was not a Vera Wang. It was a custom Galia Lahav flown in from Tel Aviv. It was a masterpiece of lace and illusion mesh, encrusted with Swarovski crystals that caught the light like crushed stars. It had cost $40,000, paid for with my own money earned from my own success. I stepped into it. It fit like a second skin. No tugging, no pulling, just perfection. Valencia finished my look with a nude lip and a dusting of diamond powder on my collarbones. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the girl who used to hide in her bedroom reading books to escape her mother's criticism. I saw a woman who had built an empire from the ashes of her self-esteem. Dante stood behind me, his eyes dark with emotion. "You look like war," he whispered. "Beautiful, destructive war." I turned to him. "Are the helicopters ready?" "They are on the roof," he said. We took the private elevator up to the helipad. The wind whipped at my hair, but Valencia had set it with industrial strength spray so it didn't move. Waiting for us was not a standard transport helicopter. It was a Sikorsky S-76 painted matte black with gold trim. The interior was lined with cream leather. As I stepped onto the roof, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from Bianca. "I hate you. You ruined everything. If you don't show up with money right now, you are dead to me." I looked at the message. Then I looked at the helicopter blades slicing through the air. I typed a reply. "I am already dead to you, Bianca. I am a ghost, and ghosts don't pay bills." I tossed the phone to Dante. He caught it and slid it into his pocket. The pilot nodded as we approached. I climbed into the cabin, the smell of leather and aviation fuel filling my senses. I buckled my seatbelt. Below us, the St. Regis was a hive of panic, bad decisions, and safety pins. Above us, the sky was wide open. 30 minutes away, on a private island off the coast of Georgia that belonged to the Sterling estate, my real life was waiting. Eleanor Sterling was there. Senators were there. The people who ran the world were there. And they were waiting for me. Dante took my hand as the helicopter lifted off. The city of Atlanta fell away beneath us, turning into a grid of toy cars and doll houses. I looked down at the St. Regis one last time. I imagined my father trying to explain to the guests why there was no premium scotch. I imagined my mother trying to hide the safety pins on Bianca's back. I imagined Liam Sterling looking around the room, realizing that his mother and the entire board of directors were missing. It was not just a wedding I was flying to. It was a coronation. I leaned back against the headrest and closed my eyes, a smile touching my lips. "It is showtime," I whispered. The helicopter banked left, turning toward the ocean, leaving the wreckage of my past in the rearview mirror. The silence was over. The noise was about to begin. The grand ballroom at the St. Regis was designed to hold royalty. Its ceilings soared 30 feet high, adorned with crystal chandeliers that cost more than most homes. When filled with 300 guests, the room hummed with a specific frequency of wealth and power. But when filled with barely 50 confused people scattered across a sea of empty gold Chiavari chairs, the room did not feel grand. It felt like a mausoleum. I watched the scene unfold from thousands of feet in the air, monitoring the live feed on Dante's tablet as our helicopter cut through the clouds toward the coast. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except I was the one who had cut the brake lines. Down on the ground, the atmosphere was thick with awkwardness. The air conditioning was humming too loudly, filling the uncomfortable silences between the guests. The floral arrangements, which were supposed to be cascading towers of white orchids, were instead modest bouquets of carnations and baby's breath, the result of the last-minute budget cuts caused by Bianca's frozen credit cards. They looked small and pathetic against the massive scale of the room, wilting slightly under the harsh ballroom lights. Bianca stood near the entrance, her back turned to the wall to hide the safety pins holding her dress together. She was smiling, but it was a rictus of terror. Her eyes darted constantly to the main doors, waiting for the flood of socialites, bankers, and politicians that she had promised everyone would be there. They were not coming. Liam stood at the altar looking like a man facing a firing squad. He was sweating profusely, his face pale and slick. He kept checking his Rolex every 30 seconds, tapping the glass as if the watch were broken. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, hidden behind his bouquet, and dialed his mother's number for the 10th time. I could almost hear the voicemail message playing in his ear. The same message Eleanor had recorded just for today. I am currently away attending a private family matter. Please do not leave a message. The groomsmen, a collection of frat brothers and drinking buddies who looked hungover, shifted uncomfortably. They whispered among themselves, casting glances at the empty pews on the groom's side. The Sterling side of the aisle was a barren wasteland. There were no board members, no partners from the firm, no senators, just a few distant cousins who hadn't checked the group chat and a couple of Liam's college friends who were only there for the free bar. My mother, Evelyn, was in full damage control mode. She was moving among the sparse guests like a hummingbird on caffeine, her laughter shrill and forced. She grabbed the arm of Mrs. Higgins, the president of the local garden club, and practically dragged her toward the front. "Oh, you know how traffic is in Buckhead on a Saturday?" My mother lied, her voice echoing slightly in the empty room. "The Sterling family is traveling in a convoy, you know. Security protocols. They will be here any minute. We are just holding the ceremony so Eleanor can make her grand entrance." Mrs. Higgins pulled her arm away, gently smoothing her dress. She looked around the room with a critical eye. "Security protocols?" she asked, raising a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Evelyn, I just checked Waze. The traffic is green all the way from the Sterling estate, and I saw on Instagram that the senator is in town. Strange that he isn't here yet. Bianca said he was officiating." My mother flushed. A deep blotchy red stain crept up her neck. "Oh, well, plans change," she stammered. "The senator had a brief legislative emergency, but he sent his regards. And look, there is Liam. Doesn't he look dashing? A true Sterling heir." Mrs. Higgins looked at Liam, who was currently wiping sweat from his upper lip with his sleeve. "He looks like he is about to vomit." "Evelyn," Mrs. Higgins observed dryly. The tension in the room was palpable. The guests who had shown up were beginning to realize they had been sold a lie. They checked their phones. They whispered behind their hands. The silence was punctuated only by the nervous coughing of my father, who was standing by the bar, realizing that the premium scotch he had promised everyone was actually mid-shelf whiskey poured into crystal decanters. Bianca finally walked away from the wall and approached Liam. She hissed something at him. Even without audio, I could read the anger in her body language. "Where are they?" she was asking. "Where is your mother?" "You promised she would be here." Liam threw his hands up, looking helpless. "I don't know, Bianca. She isn't answering." "Maybe the jet had mechanical issues," Jet, a bridesmaid, asked, overhearing them. "I thought they were driving from the estate." Liam froze. He had been caught in a lie he didn't even know he was telling. He had assumed they were coming. He had assumed his mother would fall in line because that is what she always did. He had never considered the possibility that Eleanor Sterling had simply decided to opt out. Suddenly, a ripple went through the room. It started in the back row where a group of younger guest influencers Bianca had invited to boost the wedding's hashtag were glued to their phones. One girl, a fashion blogger with blue hair, gasped loudly. "Oh my God," she said. Heads turned. The whisper started low like the buzzing of insects and then grew louder. "What is it?" someone asked. The girl stood up holding her phone high. She looked at Bianca, then at Liam with a mixture of pity and shock. "You guys need to see this," she said. My mother rushed over, trying to snatch the phone away. "Put that away. We are about to start the ceremony. No phones allowed." But it was too late. Do you want to see their faces when the truth hit them, when they realized who I really was? Comment "I want to know" below, so I know you're still with me. And a heads up, the next part contains dramatized and fictionalized moments created for narrative impact. If you'd rather not continue, this is the moment to pause the video. Other people were pulling out their phones now. Notifications were pinging across the room like popcorn popping. "What is happening?" Bianca shrieked, her composure finally cracking. "Why is everyone looking at their phones?" A man in the third row, one of the few business associates of my father who had bothered to come, stood up. He held his phone out toward my father. "Marcus," he said, his voice grave. "You said the Sterlings were stuck in traffic." My father wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "They are heavy traffic on 400. "Then how do you explain this?" the man asked. He turned the screen around. On the screen was a live stream. It was broadcasting from a verified account. The account belonged to Vogue magazine. The caption read, "Exclusive inside the wedding of the century. The Sterling dynasty gathers at their private island sanctuary to celebrate true love and legacy." The video showed a pristine white sand beach. The water was a turquoise so bright it looked painted. In the background, a massive floral arch made of thousands of white orchids, the ones Bianca had wanted but couldn't afford, framed the ocean view. But it was the people in the video that made the room gasp. There was Senator Vance holding a glass of champagne, laughing with the CEO of BlackRock. There was the entire board of directors of Sterling Equity dressed in linen suits and summer dresses. And there, sitting front and center in a gold chair looking regal and terrifyingly elegant, was Eleanor Sterling. She was not stuck in traffic. She was not on a broken jet. She was sipping iced tea on an island 300 miles away. My mother stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. That must be old footage," she stammered, her voice trembling. "That is from last year's retreat. It has to be." The fashion blogger shook her head. "No, Mrs. Davis. Look at the timestamp. It is live. And look at who is sitting next to Eleanor." The camera panned to the right. Sitting next to Eleanor Sterling was a man the world recognized instantly. A Hollywood A-lister who had just won an Oscar. And next to him was the vice president's daughter. "They are all there," the blogger whispered. "Everyone who matters is there." Bianca snatched the phone from the girl's hand. She stared at the screen, her eyes bulging. She watched as the camera panned across the crowd, showing the laughing faces, the luxury, the sheer exclusivity of the event. Then the camera focused on the empty aisle. The caption updated, "Waiting for the bride." "This isn't my wedding," Bianca whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked up at Liam. Liam was staring at his own phone, his face a mask of horror. He had just received a text from his cousin who was on the island. The text read, "Bro, why aren't you here? Grandma Eleanor said you decided to have a small elopement, but we are all at Zara's wedding. It is insane here." Zara, Bianca screamed. The sound tore through the ballroom, shattering the last remnants of decorum. She looked at my parents. "Zara. She is at the island." My father looked at the phone, then at Liam, then at the empty chairs around him. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The small backyard thing I had told him about was not a backyard. It was the Sterling private island, and the nobody guests I had mentioned were the most powerful people in the country. Liam dropped his phone. It clattered loudly on the marble floor. "She is at the island," Liam whispered, his voice shaking. "My mother is at Zara's wedding." The guests began to stand up. The murmurs turned into open conversation. "Wait, so this is the B-list wedding?" someone asked loudly. "The Sterlings aren't coming here. Why are we here if the real party is there?" Mrs. Higgins stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Well, Evelyn," she said, her voice dripping with ice, "it seems you were mistaken about the traffic, and about which daughter is the priority." She picked up her purse. "I think I have seen enough." She walked out. Then the business associate walked out. Then the influencers, realizing there was no clout to be gained here, packed up their ring lights and left. One by one, the room began to empty. The 50 guests dwindled to 40, then 30, then 10. Bianca stood at the altar surrounded by empty chairs and wilting carnations. The safety pin on her dress finally gave way, and the back of her gown popped open, revealing her corset. She didn't try to fix it. She just stood there, staring at the live stream on the phone she was still clutching. On the screen, the music started. A live orchestra began to play. And thousands of feet in the air inside the helicopter that was now descending toward that turquoise water, I adjusted my veil. Dante squeezed my hand. "They know," he said. I looked down at the island approaching below us. I could see the tiny dots of people. I could see the flowers. I could see the victory. "Let them watch," I said. Back at the St. Regis, the silence was total. Liam looked at Bianca. Bianca looked at Liam. And for the first time, they saw each other clearly. No sterling fortune, no perfect image, just two frauds standing in an empty room, realizing that while they were playing house, I had been building a kingdom. My mother sank into one of the gold chairs and put her head in her hands. "We are at the wrong wedding," she whispered. My father didn't answer. He was already running toward the exit, his phone to his ear, desperately trying to charter a plane, a boat, anything that would get him to the island. He didn't care about Bianca anymore. He didn't care about the humiliation. He only cared about one thing. He needed to be where the money was. But as he ran out the doors, leaving his youngest daughter sobbing at the altar, he didn't know that the island had a strict no-fly zone for uninvited guests, and his name was definitely not on the list. The realization that hit my parents inside the empty ballroom of the St. Regis was not one of shame. It was not a sudden awakening of conscience or a realization that they had neglected the wrong daughter. For people like Marcus and Evelyn Davis, shame was an emotion they had long ago traded for ambition. As they stared at the live stream on the phone, watching the glitterati of the world gathered on a pristine white beach, their minds did not register that this was Zara's wedding. That would require admitting they were wrong. Instead, their brains performed a frantic, desperate, acrobatic feat to preserve their own egos. My father grabbed my mother's arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Evelyn," he hissed, his eyes wide and manic. "Look at the setup. Look at the chairs. This isn't Zara's wedding." My mother blinked, confused. "But Marcus, the caption says..." "Ignore the caption," my father snapped, sweat dripping down his temple. "Think about it. Why would Eleanor Sterling, a woman who controls billions, go to Zara's wedding? Zara is a nobody, a freelancer. Eleanor hates incompetence." "No, this is a test." "A test," my mother whispered, hope flickering in her eyes. "Yes," my father continued, his voice rising in excitement. "Eleanor is testing our loyalty. She wanted to see if we would commit to the date. But the real party, the VIP reception for the inner circle, is on the island. She didn't invite us formally because she wanted to see if we had the initiative to come. She is waiting for us to crash it. It is a power move." My mother's face transformed. The horror vanished, replaced by a hungry, predatory gleam. "You are right. It makes perfect sense. She is checking if we have the drive to be Sterlings. If we stay here in this empty ballroom, we fail. If we get to that island, we prove we belong." They looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between them. The delusion was complete. In their minds, they were not abandoning their youngest daughter. They were seizing a golden opportunity for the family legacy. They turned toward the door. Bianca, who was still standing at the altar clutching her popped dress, saw them moving. Her face crumpled. "Mom! Dad! Where are you going?" she cried out, her voice cracking. "The ceremony hasn't finished. Liam is still on the phone." My father didn't even slow down. He walked past her, checking his watch. "We have to go, Bianca. There has been a change in venue." What? Bianca stepped off the altar, stumbling in her heels. "What do you mean? The real wedding is on the island," my mother said over her shoulder, not making eye contact. "Eleanor is waiting for us. We have to make an appearance. It is strictly for the heads of the families. You stay here and wrap things up." "Wrap things up!" Bianca shrieked. "It is my wedding day. You can't leave me. There is nobody here." Liam, who was still trying to reach his cousin, looked up. "Wait, are you going to where my mother is?" "Take me with you." My father pushed Liam back. "No, you stay here with your wife. Show some leadership, son. We will go smooth things over with your mother." "But, Dad," Bianca grabbed his sleeve. "Please, I am scared." Everyone left. My father ripped his arm away. His face was cold, devoid of any paternal warmth. "Stop whining, Bianca. This is what being an adult looks like. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the greater good. We are going to secure your future. You should be thanking us." With that, they turned their backs on her. They walked out of the double doors of the ballroom, leaving Bianca standing alone in the center of the room, surrounded by empty chairs, wilting flowers, and the echoing silence of her own failure. She collapsed onto the floor, her white dress pooling around her like a surrender flag, sobbing into her hands. But her parents didn't hear her. They were already running down the hallway. Once outside the hotel, the panic set in. My father was barking orders into his phone as they waited for the valet to bring their car. "I don't care how much it costs," he shouted at a charter boat captain on the other end of the line. "I need a vessel that can get us to Sterling Island in under an hour. Yes, I know it is private property. I am the father of the bride. Just have the engine running." They sped toward the coast, driving 20 miles over the speed limit. My mother spent the entire ride fixing her hair in the vanity mirror, reapplying lipstick with shaking hands. "Do I look all right?" she asked breathlessly. "I need to look like I belong there, Marcus." "You look fine," he snapped, swerving through traffic. "Just remember the story. We were delayed by a security check. We didn't know about the venue change until the last minute. Blame the assistant. Always blame the assistant." They arrived at the marina, a small exclusive dock where wealthy yacht owners kept their toys. My father had secured a high-speed powerboat usually used for deep-sea fishing. The captain, a gruesome man with a sunburned face, looked at their formal wear with amusement. "You folks going to a party?" he asked, spitting tobacco into the water. "We are attending the Sterling nuptials," my father said, puffing out his chest as he helped my mother onto the swaying boat. "And we are late. Step on it." The boat roared to life. As they tore across the water, the wind whipped my mother's carefully sprayed hair into a frenzy. Salt spray soaked my father's expensive tuxedo. They bounced violently over the waves, holding onto the rails for dear life, but neither of them complained. They stared at the horizon with maniacal focus. They were chasing the dragon. They were chasing the validation they had craved their entire lives. In their minds, they were already there. They imagined the scene. They would step onto the dock and Eleanor Sterling would greet them with a knowing smile. She would say, "You made it. You passed the test. Welcome to the inner circle." They would drink vintage champagne with the senator. They would laugh about the mix-up at the St. Regis. They would finally be somebody. The ride took 45 minutes of bone-jarring speed. Finally, the island came into view. It was breathtaking. Even from a distance, the wealth was palpable. A massive mega yacht was anchored offshore. Several helicopters were parked on the helipad. The white tents on the beach fluttered in the breeze, and the faint sound of a live orchestra drifted over the water. "That is it," my mother whispered, clutching her pearls. "Oh, Marcus, look at it. It is paradise." My father grinned, a look of pure greed. "And it is ours, Evelyn. We are the in-laws. This is our world now." As the boat approached the private dock, however, the reality began to assert itself. The dock was not empty. It was swarming with men in black suits and earpieces. This was not hotel security. This was private military contracting. The captain slowed the boat down. Folks, we are being hailed." A sleek patrol boat cut across their path, its siren blaring. A man with a megaphone stood on the bow. "Identify yourself and state your business. This is a restricted zone. Turn around immediately." My father stood up in the boat, waving his arms. "It is okay. I am Marcus Davis. I am the father of the bride. We are here for the wedding." The security team did not lower their weapons. They did not smile. "We have no record of a Marcus Davis on the guest list," the voice boomed back. "Check again," my father screamed, his voice carrying over the water. "Ask Eleanor Sterling. Tell her the in-laws are here." It is a surprise. The patrol boat pulled alongside them. 2 guards boarded their fishing boat. They were massive, efficient, and completely unimpressed by my father's tuxedo. "Sir, you are trespassing on private property," the lead guard said. His voice was flat. "Trespassing?" My father laughed nervously. "Do you know who I am? My daughter is marrying Liam Sterling." The guard looked at him, then touched his earpiece. "Control, we have an intruder claiming relation to the groom. Says he is the father of the bride." There was a pause. The guard listened to the voice in his ear. His expression shifted from indifference to something colder. "Copy that," the guard said. He looked at my father. "Sir, I have just confirmed with the wedding planner. The bride's father is deceased." My father's face went white. "What? No, I am standing right here." "Who told you that?" "The bride," the guard said. "Ms. Zara Davis. She informed security that her parents passed away years ago. She was very specific. She said she is an orphan." My mother let out a gasp. "Zara. But Bianca." "This isn't Bianca's wedding, ma'am," the guard said, looking at her ruined hair and wet dress. "This is the wedding of Ms. Zara Davis and Mr. Dante Williams, and you are not on the list." The world seemed to stop spinning for Marcus and Evelyn Davis. The delusion shattered. The mental gymnastics failed. They were standing on a rocking boat soaked in salt water, facing men with guns, realizing that they had traveled miles across the ocean to crash a party hosted by the daughter they had called a failure. But wait. My father was desperate now. He grabbed the guard's arm. "You don't understand. We made a mistake. We are her parents. Please just let us talk to her. She will vouch for us. We just want to wish her happiness." The guard removed my father's hand from his arm with a grip that promised pain. "Sir, the instructions are clear. No uninvited guests, especially not the ones on the blacklist." "Blacklist," my mother whispered. "Yes, ma'am. Your names are flagged, red level. That means do not admit under any circumstances." My father looked past the guard toward the beach. He could see the guests mingling. He could see the waiters passing trays of caviar. He could see the life he wanted so badly it physically hurt. And he could see in the distance a woman in a crystal-encrusted gown laughing with a man in a tuxedo. Zara. She looked radiant. She looked powerful. She looked completely unbothered by their absence. "Please," my father begged, his dignity gone. "Just let us stand in the back. We won't say a word. Just let us be there." The guard shook his head. "Turn the boat around, Captain, or we will impound it." My father slumped onto the bench of the boat. He looked back at the island as the captain gunned the engine, turning them away from paradise. He saw the yacht. He saw the helicopters. He saw the sheer, unadulterated power that his daughter commanded. And he realized with a sick, sinking feeling in his gut that he hadn't just bet on the wrong horse. He had shot the winning horse in the leg, and it had won the race anyway, leaving him in the dust. My mother began to weep not for Zara, but for the proximity to Eleanor Sterling that she had lost. She was right there, my mother sobbed. I could have touched her. My father didn't speak. He just watched the island grow smaller in the distance, a shining jewel that he was locked out of forever. He had chased the illusion of status and found only the reality of his own irrelevance. As they rode back in silence, the salt spray tasting like tears, the only thing waiting for them on the mainland was a crying daughter in a ripped dress and a bill for a wedding that never happened. They had abandoned one child to chase another, and in the end, they had lost both. My father was a man who prided himself on his dignity, yet there he was scrambling on his hands and knees through a dense thicket of palmetto bushes like a common fugitive. After the security patrol had turned their boat away, he had not accepted defeat. Instead, fueled by a toxic cocktail of desperation and greed, he had bribed the fishing boat captain $5,000 money he certainly did not have after the St. Regis fiasco to drop them off at a jagged, unguarded cove on the north side of the island. My mother followed him, her heels sinking into the soft mud, her designer dress snagged on thorns. She was weeping silently not from the physical pain, but from the terrifying realization that she was currently trespassing on the property of the very people she had spent her life trying to impress. They looked less like the parents of the bride and more like castaways who had washed up after a shipwreck. Just over that ridge, Evelyn, my father hissed, wiping mud from his cheek. I can hear the music. We just need to find a side entrance. Once Eleanor sees us, it will be fine. We will laugh about the misunderstanding. We will tell her we got lost. She will respect our persistence. They truly believed that. They believed that their intrusion would be viewed as charming initiative rather than criminal trespassing. It was the ultimate delusion of the narcissist, the belief that the world was waiting for them to arrive. They pushed through the final barrier of tropical foliage and stumbled out onto the edge of the manicured lawn. They quickly hid behind a row of oversized ornamental vases, peering out at the scene before them. The breath left my mother's body in a sharp, painful wheeze. It was not just a wedding, it was a summit. The lawn was transformed into a cathedral of nature. Thousands of white orchids cascaded from arches that framed the turquoise ocean. The chairs were gold, the carpet was white velvet, and the air smelled of sea salt and expensive champagne. But it was the guests that made my father grab the stone vase for support. There, in the third row, sat the governor of Georgia, laughing with a tech billionaire whose face was on the cover of Forbes last month. 2 rows ahead sat a famous talk show host who my mother had worshipped for 20 years. And in the front row, sitting with the posture of a queen, was Eleanor Sterling. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and looking completely relaxed. She was not checking her watch. She was not looking for her son. She was smiling. My mother clutched my father's arm, her fingernails digging into his suit jacket. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling. Is that Senator Vance?" My father squinted. "It is. And he is officiating." Senator Vance, the man my father had tried to donate money to for years just to get a handshake, was standing at the altar adjusting his reading glasses. "But wait," my father whispered, confusion clouding his eyes. "Where is Bianca? If this is the real wedding, why isn't Bianca standing there?" Then the music changed. The string quartet, who were positioned on a floating platform in the infinity pool, began to play a soaring cinematic arrangement of a classic jazz standard. The guests stood up. The sound of hundreds of people rising in unison was like the rustle of silk. My parents craned their necks watching the top of the aisle. They expected to see Liam. They expected to see Bianca running out breathless but triumphant. Instead, Dante walked out. He did not walk from the side. He walked down the aisle, a break from tradition that signaled this was his domain. He wore a tuxedo that was cut so sharply it looked like a weapon. The fabric was midnight blue, contrasting perfectly with his dark skin. He didn't look like the struggling musician my parents had mocked for 3 years. He walked with the heavy, grounded confidence of a man who owned the earth beneath his feet. As he passed the guests, people didn't just smile. They nodded with deep respect. The tech billionaire gave him a thumbs up. The governor patted him on the back. My father shook his head, blinking rapidly. Why are they respecting him? He is the help. He must be. He must be providing the entertainment. Then Dante reached the altar. He stood next to Senator Vance. The senator shook his hand warmly, leaning in to whisper something that made Dante laugh. He is the groom, my mother breathed, the reality finally piercing her denial. Marcus, he is the groom. No, my father insisted, his voice rising in panic. That is impossible. He plays trumpet in dive bars. He drives a Honda. This is an elaborate prank. Then the archway at the top of the aisle filled with light. I stepped out. I was not wearing the modest department store dress my mother had suggested I buy. I was wearing $40,000 of Israeli lace and hand-stitched crystals. The dress hugged my curves and flared out at the bottom like a mermaid rising from the foam. My veil was 10 feet long, trailing behind me like smoke. But it wasn't the dress that made my parents gasp. It was the jewelry. Around my neck was the sterling sapphire, a necklace I had seen in magazines, a necklace that had belonged to Eleanor Sterling's grandmother. It was a piece of history, a symbol of the Sterling matriarchy, and it was resting against my skin. I walked down the aisle alone. I didn't need my father to give me away. I had given myself away to the man who actually saw me. As I walked, I locked eyes with Eleanor Sterling. She winked at me. I smiled. My parents watched from behind the vase, their world crumbling into dust. They watched the daughter they had called a failure, the daughter they had hidden in the back of photos, walking through a corridor of power that they could never enter. They saw the way the guests looked at me, not with pity, not with tolerance, but with awe. My father made a noise in the back of his throat, a strangled sound of disbelief. She has the necklace, he choked out. Eleanor gave her the necklace. She gave it to Zara. Not Bianca. Zara. My mother was shaking. She was vibrating with a mix of jealousy and confusion so potent it looked like she was having a seizure. Why, she hissed. Why her? She is difficult. She is stubborn. She is the black sheep. I reached the altar. Dante took my hands. He looked at me with a love so fierce it felt like a physical force. Senator Vance cleared his throat. The microphone carried his voice across the lawn, crisp and clear. Welcome, everyone, to the union of two extraordinary souls. We are gathered here on this beautiful island, generously hosted by the Sterling family, to celebrate the marriage of Zara Davis, the brilliant mind who has saved half the people in this audience from PR disasters. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. I smiled. And Dante Williams, the silent king of Harlem real estate and the man who keeps jazz alive in this country. My father froze. The silent king of Harlem real estate. The words echoed in his brain. Harlem real estate, brownstones, commercial lots, historic buildings. My father did the math in his head instantly. He realized that the dive bars Dante played in were actually clubs he owned. The buildings above them were his. The investments Dante had mentioned at dinner weren't crypto, they were city blocks. He is rich, my father whispered, his knees giving out. He sank into the mud. He is richer than Liam. He is richer than us. He is richer than everyone we know. My mother didn't care about the money. She was staring at Eleanor Sterling, who was dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She loves her, my mother whimpered. Eleanor loves Zara. The ceremony proceeded. We exchanged vows. I promised to be Dante's partner in building our empire. He promised to always protect me from the people who couldn't see my worth. When he said those words, he looked directly toward the bushes where my parents were hiding. He couldn't see them, but he knew. He knew they would try to come. I do, I said. I do, Dante said. You may kiss the bride. Senator Vance announced. Dante kissed me and the crowd erupted. Rose petals rained down from hidden cannons. The orchestra swelled. It was perfect. It was the moment I had dreamed of. And then the spell broke. My mother couldn't take it anymore. The sight of me, the scapegoat, the punching bag, the second choice standing there in diamonds, being cheered by the elite while she stood in the mud in a ruined dress, was too much for her psyche to handle. She stepped out from behind the vase. She stumbled onto the white velvet carpet, her feet leaving muddy streaks on the pristine fabric. Her hair was wild. Her mascara was running down her face. She looked like a banshee. "Stop!" she screamed. The music didn't stop immediately. The applause died down, slowly replaced by a confused silence. Heads turned. 300 of the most powerful people in America looked at the woman standing at the back of the aisle. My mother pointed a shaking finger at me. "What is this?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "What is this, Zara? You told us it was a backyard party. You told us nobody was coming." Security guards began to move in from the sides, but Dante held up a hand to stop them. He wanted this. He wanted them to see. I turned slowly on the altar. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father, who was cowering behind her, trying to shrink into his tuxedo. I picked up the microphone from the stand. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used when I was talking a CEO off a ledge. "I didn't tell you nobody was coming." "Mother," I said, my voice amplified across the island. "I said nobody you considered important was coming." I gestured to the crowd, to the senator, to the movie star, to Eleanor. "I guess we have different definitions of important," I said. My mother stood there, her mouth gaping open. She looked at Eleanor Sterling. "Eleanor," she cried out, taking a step forward. "It is me, Evelyn. We met. We almost met. I am Bianca's mother. We are family." Eleanor Sterling stood up slowly. She adjusted her hat. She looked at my mother with the same expression one would use to look at a cockroach on a wedding cake. "I have no idea who this woman is," Eleanor said loudly, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. The crowd gasped. A few people chuckled. But, my mother stammered. "The wedding, Bianca security," Eleanor said, sitting back down. "Please remove the trash. It is ruining the view." 4 massive guards descended on my parents. My father tried to run, but he slipped in the mud. My mother was screaming as they grabbed her arms. "Zara, Zara. Tell them, we are your parents. We came all this way. We love you." I watched them being dragged away, their heels dragging lines through the sand. I watched the people who had made me feel small for 30 years being reduced to nothing more than a nuisance at my celebration. I looked at Dante. He was smiling. I brought the microphone to my lips one last time. "I am an orphan," I said softly. Then I dropped the mic. It hit the floor with a thud. The crowd cheered, the music started again, and I turned back to my husband, leaving my parents to be tossed back into the sea where they belonged. The payoff wasn't just the dress or the money or the guests. The payoff was the look on their faces when they realized that they were not the heroes of this story. They were not even the villains. They were just the extras who had been cut from the final scene. The silence that followed my dropping of the microphone was not empty. It was heavy, charged with the kind of electricity that precedes a lightning strike. My parents stood on the white velvet carpet, mud dripping from their shoes, looking like stains on a masterpiece. The security guards held them firmly by the arms, but for a moment nobody moved. The entire assembly of 300 guests, senators, CEOs, and Hollywood royalty stared at Marcus and Evelyn Davis with a mixture of confusion and secondhand embarrassment. My mother, Evelyn, was the first to break the paralysis. Her narcissism was a survival mechanism, and it kicked into overdrive. She looked at the security guards, then at the crowd, and her brain frantically rewrote the narrative. She decided that this was not an ejection. This was an opportunity. She shook off the guard's hand with the indignant huff, smoothing her ruined dress, as if she were simply late for a board meeting. "Unband me this instant," she hissed, her voice trembling, but loud enough to be heard in the front rows. "Do you know who I am? I am the mother of the bride. And I am the mother-in-law of Liam Sterling. She turned her gaze toward Eleanor Sterling, who was sitting in the front row looking at my mother over the rim of her sunglasses. My mother stepped forward, desperate to make eye contact, desperate to bridge the gap between her reality and the one she craved. Eleanor Evelyn cried out, forcing a jagged, hysterical smile. "Oh, thank goodness we found you. There was a terrible mix-up at the hotel. The staff sent us to the wrong venue. Can you believe the incompetence? But we are here now. We made it." My father, Marcus, sensing an opening, puffed out his chest. He tried to straighten his tuxedo, ignoring the fact that it was soaked in seawater and covered in sand. "Yes, Senator Vance," he shouted, waving at the man standing next to Dante. "Good to see you again. I believe we met at the fundraiser last year. I am Marcus Davis, Zara's father. I assume my seat is in the front." The delusion was breathtaking. They truly believed that if they just acted confident enough, the world would rearrange itself to accommodate them. They thought they could bully their way into high society just like they had bullied me for 32 years. Senator Vance looked at my father. He adjusted his glasses, squinting slightly. "I have never met you in my life, sir," the senator said, his voice dry and amplified by his lapel microphone. My father's face faltered. But I donated." Eleanor Sterling stood up. The movement was slow, graceful, and commanded absolute attention. The rustling of the crowd stopped instantly. Eleanor didn't need a microphone. She had the kind of voice that projected authority without raising a decibel. She walked out from the pew and stood in the center of the aisle, blocking my parents' path to the altar. She looked at them with a cold, clinical curiosity, as if they were a particularly invasive species of weed she had found in her rose garden. "You are the Davises," Eleanor stated. It was not a question. "Yes." My mother sobbed, relief flooding her face. "Yes, Eleanor. We are family. We are the in-laws." Eleanor tilted her head. "You are the people who tried to force my son to marry on a specific date because of a psychic. You are the people who bullied the St. Regis into canceling a contract. And you are the people who left your youngest daughter sobbing at an empty altar an hour ago because you thought there was a better party happening here." The color drained from my mother's face. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. We watched the live stream. Eleanor continued, her voice slicing through the air. "We saw you leave her. We saw you running for the boat. It was quite the performance." My father stepped forward, sweating profusely. "Mrs. Sterling, please. You have to understand. We did it for the Alliance. We wanted to show our respect to you." Respect. Eleanor laughed, a short, sharp sound that felt like a slap. "You trespassed on my private island. You insulted my security team. And now you are interrupting the wedding of the only member of your family who actually possesses a spine." She pointed a manicured finger at the exit. "You are not family, Mr. and Mrs. Davis. You are social climbers who ran out of ladder. Now get off my island before I have you arrested for criminal trespassing." My father looked around the crowd, his eyes wild. He saw the judgment. He saw the disgust. He realized there was no alliance. There was no seat at the table. Desperation turned to rage. If he couldn't join them, he would burn it all down. He turned his eyes toward the altar, toward Dante. He saw Dante standing there in his bespoke tuxedo, looking like a king. And my father snapped. His brain could not compute that the man he had ridiculed for years was standing at the pinnacle of this world. "This is a scam," my father screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Dante. "This is all a scam. Eleanor, you are being tricked." Security moved in, but Dante stepped forward. He walked down the steps of the altar, moving with a slow, predatory grace. He waved the guards back. He wanted to hear this. "What is a scam?" Marcus Dante asked, his voice calm. "You," my father shouted, spit flying from his lips. "You are a broke musician. You play trumpet in dive bars. You drive a beat-up Honda. How are you paying for this? Huh? Did you steal Zara's money? Or did you rent this whole island on credit just to embarrass us?" My mother latched onto this narrative. "Yes, he is a fraud. He is a nobody. Zara is marrying a pauper just to spite us. The crowd murmured. It wasn't a murmur of doubt, it was a murmur of anticipation. They knew who Dante was. They were waiting for the execution. Dante stopped 3 feet from my father. He towered over him. He adjusted his cufflinks, looking down at Marcus with a mixture of pity and boredom. "You are right about one thing," Marcus Dante said. "I am a musician. I play the trumpet, and I do play in dive bars." My father let out a triumphant, hysterical laugh. "I knew it, I knew it. He admits it." Dante smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "I play in them because I own them," Dante said softly. My father's laugh died in his throat. "What the blue note on 4th Street mine?" Dante listed, ticking off his fingers. "The Jazz Lounge in Midtown mine. The entire block of historic brownstones in Harlem where you park your car when you visit the city mine." My father blinked. "No. That is impossible." "And that Honda Civic," Dante continued, taking a step closer. "I drive that because in my neighborhood driving a Rolls-Royce attracts the wrong kind of attention. But since we are laying all our cards on the table..." Dante reached into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out a sleek metal business card holder. He extracted a card and tucked it into the breast pocket of my father's wet, muddy tuxedo. "You should check your landlord's name on your lease, Marcus." My father looked down at the card. He looked confused. My landlord is HRE Holdings," HRE Dante repeated. "Harlem Real Estate. Or if you want to get technical, Harlem Renaissance Enterprises." The silence on the lawn was absolute. You could hear the waves crashing against the rocks. My father's mouth fell open. He looked at Dante. He looked at the card. The gears in his head were grinding, trying to process the impossible truth. The man he had called a loser, the man he had told to carry ice at the St. Regis, was his landlord. You own my apartment building," my father whispered. "I own the building you live in," Dante corrected. "I own the building your dealership leases its lot from. And I own the firm that holds the mortgage on the St. Regis Hotel, where you just abandoned your other daughter." Dante leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that only my parents and the high-quality microphone could hear. "I am a musician, Marcus, but I own the roof over your head. And I suggest you start being very polite, because my property management team is reviewing lease renewals next week, and they have a very low tolerance for tenants who harass my wife." My mother let out a strangled sob. She looked at me. I was standing at the altar holding my bouquet, watching them with a face of stone. "Zara," she wailed, reaching out a hand. "You knew! You knew he was a tycoon! Why didn't you tell us? We would have treated him differently." I laughed. It was a bitter, short sound. "And that, mother, is exactly why I didn't tell you." I nodded to the security guards. "Get them out of here." This time there was no hesitation. 4 guards grabbed my parents. They didn't drag them gently. They hauled them backward across the sand. My father was shouting about leases and contracts. My mother was screaming my name, begging for forgiveness, begging for an introduction to the senator, begging for anything that would let her stay in the light. But they were dragged into the shadows of the palm trees. The last thing I saw was my father losing his shoe in the mud, hopping on one foot as he was forced back toward their pathetic fishing boat. The crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was a roar of approval. They had witnessed justice. They had seen the parasites removed from the host. Dante walked back up the steps to me. He took my hand. His palm was warm and steady. "I am sorry about the scene," he said, looking into my eyes. I squeezed his hand. "Don't be. It was the best wedding gift you could have given me." Senator Vance cleared his throat, smiling broadly. "Well," he said, "I believe we have a marriage to ratify, and I believe there is a reception waiting with significantly better liquor than whatever is happening back in Atlanta." I looked out at the ocean. The boat carrying my parents was already a small speck bouncing violently against the waves, heading back to a mainland where they had no friends, no money, and no dignity left. I turned back to Dante. "Let's dance," I said. As the orchestra began to play again, I realized that the heavy feeling in my chest, the one I had carried since I was a little girl trying to please people who couldn't be pleased, was gone. It had been carried away on a fishing boat, leaving me light-free and incredibly, undeniably rich in all the ways that mattered. While I was dancing under the stars on a private island, surrounded by the warm embrace of my new husband and the applause of the world's elite, a very different scene was unfolding 300 miles away in Atlanta. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis, which had been the staging ground for my sister's vanity, had transformed into a cage. The live stream on Liam's phone had ended, but the image of his mother sitting front row at my wedding was burned into his retinas. For Liam Sterling, a man who had never made a decision without consulting his trust fund manager, first, the situation was catastrophic. He stood there holding his phone with a grip so tight his knuckles were white, staring at Bianca. Bianca was trying to salvage the wreckage. She wiped her tears, fixed her corset, which was still popping at the seams, and reached out for him. "Liam," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "It is okay. We can fix this. My parents went to get your mother. They will bring her back. We can just start the reception. The food is already here." Liam looked at her. For the first time in their relationship, the fog of infatuation and the allure of being the hero to a damsel in distress evaporated. He didn't see a prize. He didn't see a beautiful influencer. He saw a liability. He saw a woman whose family had just been publicly humiliated and excommunicated by the very person who controlled his inheritance. He took a step back, recoiling from her touch, as if she were contagious. "Fix this." Liam laughed, a cold, humorless sound that echoed off the high ceilings. "There is no fixing this, Bianca. My mother is not coming back. She is at Zara's wedding. Do you understand what that means?" "It means she is confused," Bianca insisted, desperation creeping into her tone. "Zara manipulated her." "No," Liam snapped. "My mother does not get manipulated. She chooses winners, and she chose Zara." "Which means—" He looked around the empty room, the wilting carnations, the hired staff looking bored and annoyed, the absence of anyone who mattered. "Which means I chose the wrong sister," he finished. The words hung in the air, brutal and absolute. Bianca gasped, placing a hand over her chest. "Liam, you don't mean that. We are married. We just said our vows. Did we?" Liam asked. He looked toward the corner where the officiant, a hired judge, was packing up his briefcase. "We haven't signed the license yet. The witness signature is missing because your father ran out the door before he could sign it." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the marriage license. It was a piece of paper that represented Bianca's entire life plan. Her ticket to the high life. Her validation. Liam crumpled it in his fist. "I am not signing this," he said. Bianca screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of a predator realizing it has become the prey. "No. You can't do this. You love me." "I love the idea of us," Liam said, dropping the crumpled paper onto the floor. "I love the idea that your family was respectable, that you had potential, but look at you. Your parents are trespassers, your sister is the real power player, and you are just a fraud in a dress that doesn't fit." He turned to his groomsmen, who were awkwardly shifting their weight by the exit. "Let's go," Liam commanded. Bianca ran after him, grabbing his arm. "You can't leave me here. I have a bill to pay. The hotel. The food. I can't pay for this alone." Liam looked down at her hand on his sleeve. He peeled her fingers off one by one. "You should have thought about that before you tried to compete with Zara," he said softly. "This is your party, Bianca. You pay for it." He walked out. He didn't look back. His groomsmen followed him like ducklings, leaving Bianca standing alone in the center of the vast, empty ballroom. The heavy double doors swung shut with a finality that shook the floorboards. For a moment there was silence. Then the reality of her situation rushed in. She was alone. She was humiliated. And she was broke. Mr. Henderson, the hotel manager who had been so eager to help Bianca steal my venue months ago, approached her. His demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the obsequious smile. Gone was the deference. In his hand was a leather folder containing the final invoice. "Mrs. Sterling," he began, then corrected himself with a sneer. "Ms. Davis. We need to settle the account." Bianca wiped her face, trying to summon the arrogance that had served her so well for 29 years. "Put it on my husband's tab," she sniffed, turning away. "The Sterlings have an account here." Mr. Henderson stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Mr. Sterling has just informed the front desk that he is not responsible for any charges related to this event," he said. "He has removed his card from the file." Bianca froze. "What?" "That leaves the outstanding balance to you," Mr. Henderson said, opening the folder. "For the ballroom rental, the catering for 300 guests. Even though only 50 showed up, the food was prepared. The floral penalties and the cancellation fees for the other vendors." He tapped the bottom line. "The total is $52,400. Bianca stared at the number. It swam before her eyes. $50,000. She didn't have $50,000. She didn't even have $5,000. "This is ridiculous," she stammered. I don't have that kind of money on me. My father will pay it. Send the bill to Marcus Davis. Your father, Mr. Henderson," said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low, "has also declined the charges. His card on file was declined for the deposit earlier today. We let the event proceed on good faith because of the Sterling connection. But that connection is clearly severed." He held out a credit card terminal. "We need payment now, Ms. Davis. Or we call the authorities. Theft of services is a felony in Georgia, especially for an amount this large." "Theft!" Bianca shrieked. "I am not a thief. I am a victim here." "Pay the bill," Mr. Henderson said. Trembling, Bianca reached into her purse. She pulled out the platinum credit card. The one she had used to terrorize Miami. The one she thought was her magic wand. She didn't know that Dante had frozen it. She thought maybe, just maybe, it was a glitch that had been fixed. She handed it to Mr. Henderson with a shaking hand. "Run it," she whispered. Mr. Henderson inserted the card. He waited. Bianca held her breath, praying to a god she had never believed in. The machine beeped. A harsh, dissonant sound. "Declined." Mr. Henderson read. "Code 05. Do not honor." Bianca felt the blood drain from her legs. "Try it again. It must be a mistake." He tried it again. Beep. "Declined." "Try this one," she said, pulling out a backup visa. It was maxed out from the dress fittings, but maybe there was a little room. Beep. "Declined." "Try this one." She pulled out a store credit card. Beep. "Declined." Dante had been thorough. He hadn't just frozen the main line. He had used his financial reach to flag her entire credit profile as high risk. Every algorithm in the banking system was currently treating Bianca Davis like a radioactive isotope. Mr. Henderson handed the stack of useless plastic back to her. "It seems you are insolvent, Ms. Davis," he said. "Please," Bianca begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining the last of her makeup. "Just give me a few days. I can get the money, I promise." Mr. Henderson sighed. He signaled to the security guard standing by the door. "Lock the doors," he ordered, "and call the Atlanta Police Department. Tell them we have a theft in progress." "No," Bianca screamed. "You can't call the police. Think of my reputation." "Your reputation?" Mr. Henderson laughed. "Ms. Davis, your reputation walked out the door with your fiancé. Now sit down and wait for the officers." Bianca collapsed onto the floor. She sat in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by round tables laden with cold filet mignon and melting sorbet that no one had eaten. The ice sculpture of two swans intertwining a cheesy addition she had insisted on was dripping water onto the parquet floor, creating a puddle that soaked into the hem of her ruined dress. She looked around the room. This was supposed to be her triumph. This was supposed to be the day she proved she was better than me. Better than the sister with the dark skin and the weird job. Better than the sister who didn't fit in. Now she was a prisoner in her own palace. She fumbled for her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it twice. She needed her parents. Her father would know what to do. He always fixed it. He would scream at the manager, threaten to sue, throw his weight around until they let her go. She dialed her father's number. It rang, and rang, and rang. "Pick up," she sobbed. "Daddy, please pick up." The call went to voicemail. "You have reached Marcus Davis. I am currently unavailable closing a major deal." She hung up and dialed her mother. Ring, 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 voicemail. She didn't know that at that exact moment, her parents were being escorted off a fishing boat by the Coast Guard, having been reported for maritime trespassing by the Sterling security team. Their phones were confiscated, and they were currently trying to explain why they had tried to invade a private island. Bianca dialed again, and again. She was alone. Truly, completely alone. The silence of the ballroom was broken only by her own jagged breathing and the distant siren of a police car getting closer. She looked at the plate of food on the table nearest to her. A perfectly cooked steak, cold and gray, a glass of flat champagne. She reached out and grabbed a dinner roll. She hadn't eaten in 2 days to fit into the dress. She took a bite, chewing mechanically, mixing the taste of stale bread with the salt of her tears. She realized then that this was not just a bad day. This was the end of her life as she knew it. The Sterling name was gone. Her parents were gone. Her credit was destroyed. And somewhere miles away I was laughing. The doors opened. 2 uniformed police officers walked in, led by Mr. Henderson. "That is her Mr." Henderson said, pointing a finger at the bride sitting on the floor eating a bread roll. The officers approached her. "Ms. Davis," one of them asked, reaching for his handcuffs. Bianca looked up. She didn't fight. She didn't argue. She just held out her wrists. "I want my sister," she whispered, a final pathetic admission of defeat. But her sister was busy cutting a wedding cake worth more than Bianca's bail. And for the first time in history, the big sister wasn't coming to save her. The morning after the wedding, while Dante and I were enjoying a sunrise breakfast of acai bowls and Blue Mountain coffee on the terrace of our private villa, the world outside was burning. Or rather, Bianca's world was burning, and she was desperately trying to use the flames to torch my reputation. My phone, which I had finally turned back on, began to vibrate with a relentless intensity. It wasn't texts from family this time. It was notifications from social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. My handle was being tagged in thousands of posts per minute. I opened Instagram. The first thing I saw was a live stream recording that was currently trending #1 in the country. It was titled, "My Sister Stole My Life: The Truth About the Sterling Wedding." I tapped play. Bianca was sitting on the floor of what looked like a cheap motel room. Her eyes were puffy, her mascara smeared in a way that looked calculated rather than natural. She was wearing a frantic, terrified expression. "Hi, everyone," she whispered, sniffing loudly. "I know you guys have seen the photos from the island. I know you saw the reports about my arrest at the St. Regis. But you don't know the real story. You don't know what I have been living with." She paused to wipe a tear. "My sister Zara has always been jealous of me. Since we were little, she hated that I was the one our parents favored. She hated that I was softer, lighter. She has always held it against me. So when I got engaged to Liam Sterling, she snapped. She couldn't handle it. She seduced a criminal named Dante Williams, who runs a money laundering operation in Harlem, and they used his dirty money to hijack my wedding date." I raised an eyebrow. Money laundering. That was a bold accusation to make against a man who had just been photographed shaking hands with the governor. "She sabotaged my venue." Bianca continued, her voice rising in pitch. "She hacked my bank account so I couldn't pay my vendors. She threatened my parents. She forced them to go to that island by holding my safety over their heads. And then she had me arrested because I couldn't pay a bill she promised to cover. I am a victim of a targeted hate campaign by my own sister." Please, guys. I need help. I need legal fees. Do not let her win. The comment section on the video was initially sympathetic. People love a damsel in distress, especially one who fits the beauty standard Bianca had spent her life cultivating. OMG, poor girl. Sisters can be so evil. Justice for Bianca. I looked at Dante. He was reading a newspaper unbothered. She called me a criminal, he noted, turning a page. My lawyers are going to enjoy that defamation suit. I put down my coffee cup. I wasn't going to wait for lawyers. Bianca had made one fatal mistake. She had assumed that because I was private, I was defenseless. She forgot that my entire career was built on managing narratives. I was a crisis manager, and I was about to manage her right out of existence. I opened my laptop. I didn't need a camera. I didn't need tears. I needed receipts. I created a simple post. The caption was short: "The truth has a paper trail." Then I uploaded the carousel. Slide 1 was a screenshot of the original contract with the St. Regis signed by me 14 months ago. The date was clearly visible: October 15th. Next to it was a time-stamped email from Bianca to the hotel manager, sent 6 months later. Subject line: override, Zara Davis booking. The body of the email read, "My fiancé is Liam Sterling. Kick my sister out. She is nobody. She can get married at a courthouse." Slide 2 was a screen recording of the text messages Bianca had sent me during the dress fitting. "Bianca, mom says you have to pay for the Vera Wang. It is $20K. Don't be cheap. You know that white doesn't look good on you anyway. You need something dark to hide your skin. I am doing you a favor by letting you be seen with me." Slide 3 was the invoice from the club in Miami, showing the $5,000 charge on my card, followed by a text from Bianca. "Thanks for the drinks, loser. Go back to the hotel. You are ruining the aesthetic of the group photos." And then the final slide. It was a video from the security camera in my parents' living room, which I had installed years ago for their safety and which they had forgotten about. It captured the conversation from the night of the engagement. "Mother Zara needs to give up the date. Bianca is marrying a Sterling. We have to prioritize the asset." Bianca, exactly. Zara is used to being second best. She will get over it. She is built for suffering. I am built for luxury. I hit post. The reaction was instantaneous. The internet does not forgive. But more importantly, the internet, specifically Black Twitter, does not forgive colorism. Bianca had exposed herself not just as a greedy sister, but as someone who weaponized her proximity to whiteness to degrade her own family. The tide turned so fast it was dizzying. Within 10 minutes, the hashtag Bianca is over party was trending above her original video. Did you see the texts? She called her sister dark and said she is built for suffering. Throw the whole girl away. She tried to steal the venue using her husband's name and failed. The embarrassment. She had her sister pay for a $5,000 bar tab and then ditched her. That is not a victim, that is a predator. Then the investigators came out. Internet sleuths dug up Bianca's old tweets. They found posts where she mocked service workers. They found photos of her wearing knockoff designer gear while claiming it was real. They found the real value of her engagement ring, the moissanite receipt I had hinted at, and posted it side by side with her claims of it being a flawless diamond. Bianca tried to delete her video, but it was too late. It had been screen recorded and shared millions of times. Her comment section, which had been full of support an hour ago, was now a flood of clown emojis and demands for an apology. Sponsors dropped her. The hair vitamin company she promoted issued a statement distancing themselves. The fashion brand she modeled for scrubbed her face from their website. In the span of 2 hours, Bianca Davis went from a sympathy figure to a national pariah. But the final nail in the coffin didn't come from Twitter. It came from the only opinion that actually mattered to Bianca's future: Eleanor Sterling. At noon, a press release was issued from the Sterling family office. It was not posted on social media. It was sent directly to the Associated Press, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. It was formal, cold, and devastating. Statement regarding the marriage of Liam Sterling. The Sterling family wishes to clarify that we have no association with Ms. Bianca Davis. Recent events have brought to light character flaws and behaviors that are incompatible with the values of our family. We do not condone the harassment, financial abuse, or discriminatory language exhibited by Ms. Davis toward her sister Zara Williams, whom we hold in the highest regard. Furthermore, let it be known that any marriage license signed by Liam Sterling under false pretenses regarding the bride's character or financial standing is currently under review by our legal team. Effective immediately, Liam Sterling has been removed from the board of the Sterling Family Trust, pending the resolution of this personal matter. The family will be making no further comments. I read the statement out loud to Dante. Removed from the board, Dante whistled. She cut him off. She actually cut her own son off. It was the only way I said. Eleanor knows Liam. He is weak. If she just threatened him, he might waver. By cutting off his money, she forced him to choose survival. And Liam Sterling, a man who had never worked a day in his life, chose survival. The scene at Bianca's apartment, which I learned about later through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, was brutal. Bianca was sitting on her sofa, refreshing her feed, watching her life disintegrate in real time. She was still wearing the sweatpants she had put on after being bailed out by a friend. She was waiting for Liam to come and save her. She believed that despite everything, his love, or at least his desire to save face, would make him stand by her. When the key turned in the lock, she jumped up. Liam, she cried, running to the door. Oh, thank God you saw the press release. Your mother is insane. We have to sue her. We have to. She stopped. Liam was not alone. He was accompanied by two men in suits, lawyers. He didn't look at her. He looked at the floor. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. Liam, Bianca whispered. I am filing for an annulment, Liam said. His voice was flat, robotic. Annulment. Bianca laughed nervously. Liam, we just got married yesterday. You can't annul it. We consummated it. Fraud, one of the lawyers interjected smoothly. In the state of Georgia, a marriage can be annulled if one party was induced to enter it by fraud. You misrepresented your financial standing, you misrepresented your family relations, and you misrepresented your character. Character. Bianca screamed. I am your wife. Not anymore, Liam said. He finally looked at her. His eyes were red, but they were cold. My mother cut me off, Bianca. Do you understand? The trust fund is frozen. The allowance is gone. I have nothing because of you. Because of me, Bianca shouted. I did this for us. I wanted us to be the power couple. You wanted to be famous, Liam yelled back. And now you are. You are the most hated woman in America. I can't be seen with you. I can't be married to you. I have to fix this if I ever want to see a dime of my inheritance again. He gestured to the lawyers. They have the papers. Sign them. If you sign them now, I will give you $10,000 to help you move out. If you fight me, I will sue you for the cost of the wedding reception you ruined, and I will win. Bianca stared at him. $10,000. That was less than the cost of the dress she had destroyed. You are a coward, she spat at him. I am a Sterling, Liam replied, straightening his jacket. Or at least I am trying to be again. He turned and walked out the door, leaving the lawyers to handle the debris. Bianca stood there, the papers in her hand. She looked around the apartment. It was filled with wedding gifts that she would have to return. It was filled with the remnants of a life she had faked until she made it only to realize she had made nothing but a trap for herself. She picked up a pen. She didn't have a choice. She had $50,000 in debt to the St. Regis. She had no job. She had no followers. She had no parents coming to save her. She signed the papers. 24 hours after she thought she had secured the bag, Bianca Davis was single, broke, and homeless. I closed my laptop. The show was over. The internet was already moving on to the next scandal. but the damage was permanent. Dante reached across the table and took my hand. "Ready to go snorkeling?" he asked. I smiled, taking a deep breath of the ocean air. "I am," I said. We walked down to the beach, leaving the phones and the drama behind. As I slipped into the water, I felt a profound sense of lightness. I had spent my whole life being the shadow so Bianca could be the light. But shadows, I realized, are where the real power lies. Shadows are where you build. Shadows are where you wait. And when the time is right, the shadow swallows the light whole. 2 weeks after the wedding that dismantled the Davis family legacy, I sat in my corner office on the 45th floor of the Sovereign Tower in downtown Atlanta. The view from here was different than the view from the ground. Down there, people looked like ants scurrying around, consumed by their petty dramas. Up here, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass and the quiet hum of a server room that held the secrets of half the Senate, the world felt manageable. My assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, buzzed in on the intercom. "Ms. Davis," she said, her voice hesitant. "There are 2 individuals in the lobby demanding to see you. They claim to be your parents. They do not have an appointment, and security has already flagged them, but they are causing a scene. They say they won't leave until they speak to the chairman." I swiveled my leather chair around to look at the skyline. I had been expecting this. After the Coast Guard dropped them off at a public pier miles from their car, and after they realized their social standing had evaporated overnight, it was only a matter of time before they came looking for the lifeboat. "Send them up," I said. "Are you sure?" Chloe asked. "I can have them removed." "Send them up," I repeated. "I have 5 minutes before my conference call with Tokyo. That is all the time they are worth." I stood up and walked to the mirror. I smoothed the lapel of my white tailored suit. I looked nothing like the girl in the thrift store sweaters they used to mock. I looked like money. I looked like power. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and waited. When the double glass doors opened, Marcus and Evelyn Davis walked in. Or rather, they shuffled in. The arrogance that had defined their posture for my entire life was gone, replaced by a hunched, nervous energy. My father was wearing a suit, but it was wrinkled as if he hadn't slept in it. My mother's hair was pulled back in a severe bun lacking its usual volume. They looked tired. They looked small. They stopped in the middle of the room, their eyes widening as they took in the space. They looked at the abstract art on the walls. They looked at the awards on the shelf. They looked at the nameplate on my desk, Zara Davis, CEO and founder. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. "Zara." My mother breathed, clutching her purse with white knuckles. "Oh, Zara, look at this place. We had no idea." I didn't smile. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer them a seat. "You had no idea, because you never asked," I said, my voice flat. "You were too busy talking about Bianca." My father cleared his throat, trying to summon a shred of his old authority. He took a step forward, putting on his best business smile, though it wavered at the edges. "Now, Zara, let's not dwell on the past. We are here to make things right. We have had a lot of time to think since the island, and we realize that we have been unfair to you. We underestimated you." He gestured around the room. "But this is incredible. A crisis management firm. I always knew you had a head for strategy. I used to say to your mother, Zara is the quiet one, but she is thinking." "Didn't I say that, Evelyn?" My mother nodded vigorously, tears welling in her eyes, the practiced tears of a woman who knew how to weaponize emotion. "Yes, Marcus, you always said that. Zara, we are so proud of you. We are so sorry for the mix-up at the wedding. We were just confused. We thought we were doing what was best for the family." I leaned back in my chair, steepled my fingers, and looked at them. "The family," I repeated. "You mean the family that left me at the altar? The family that tried to break into a private island, to network with strangers while I was saying my vows?" My father winced. "That was a mistake. We admit that. We were misled. But look, we are here now. We are a family, Zara. And families forgive. Families work together. He took another step, his eyes gleaming with a sudden idea. In fact, I was thinking, you're firm here. It is impressive, but you need experienced leadership to scale. I have decades of experience in sales and networking. Your mother is excellent at event planning. We could come on board. We could make this a family business. Imagine the headlines, the Davis dynasty. I stared at him. I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. He didn't just want forgiveness, he wanted a job. He wanted to attach himself to the very success he had tried to stifle like a barnacle looking for a new ship after sinking the last one. You want a job, I stated. My father laughed nervously. Well, not a job per se. A partnership. Consultative roles. We are in a bit of a transition period right now. The dealership is, well, the lease renewal with Dante's company didn't go through. We are looking for new opportunities. So Dante evicted you, I said. My father flinched. He chose not to renew. It is a technicality. But the point is, we are free. We are available to help you build this empire. I stood up. The movement was sudden enough that they both took a step back. I walked around the desk and leaned against the front of it, crossing my arms. Let me get this straight, I said, keeping my voice low and dangerous. You spent 30 years ignoring me. You spent thousands of dollars on Bianca's whims, while I paid my own way through college. You humiliated me at every family gathering. You tried to ruin my wedding. And now because you are broke and I am rich, you want to be partners. My mother stepped forward, reaching out a hand. Zara, please, don't be like this. We are your parents. We gave you life. You gave me biology, I corrected. You didn't give me life. You gave me a complex that took 10 years of therapy to unravel. You gave me the belief that I was worthless unless I was serving Bianca. But we are here now. My mother cried, a real tear finally escaping. Doesn't that count for something? We came to you. You came to the CEO, I said. You didn't come to the daughter. If I were sitting in a cubicle right now, if I were still the struggling freelancer you thought I was, would you be here? They didn't answer. The silence was the answer. If I were broke, I continued, my voice trembling slightly with suppressed rage. If Liam had married Bianca, and she was the one on the island, and I was the one sitting in a motel room, would you be here apologizing to me? Or would you be on a yacht with the Sterlings laughing about your loser daughter? My father looked at the floor. My mother looked at the wall. I nodded. That is what I thought. I walked back to my desk. I opened the top drawer. Inside, next to my high-end pens and my passport, was a small envelope. I had prepared it days ago, knowing this moment would come. I pulled it out. It wasn't a check, it wasn't a job offer. It was a stack of small bills, ones and fives, crumpled and worn. I walked over to my father and pressed the money into his hand. "What is this?" he asked, looking down at the cash. "Bus fare," I said. His face turned a deep, violent shade of red. "Zara, this is insulting." "Is it?" I asked. "Do you remember my 16th birthday? You forgot it was my birthday until 10 p.m. Then you gave me $20 and told me to go buy myself a cake because you were too busy planning Bianca's sweet 16. I pointed at the money in his hand. "Do you remember when I graduated college? You didn't come to the ceremony. You sent me a card with $50 and a note that said, 'Good luck in the real world, try not to ask us for money.'" My mother put a hand over her mouth, a sob escaping. "I am just returning the investment," I said, cold as ice. "That is about $40. It should be enough to get you back to the suburbs, or wherever you are living now that you lost the house." "Zara, you can't do this," my mother pleaded. "We have nowhere to go. The community has turned on us. Everyone saw the live stream. We are pariahs." "That sounds like a branding problem," I said. "I am a crisis manager, but I only work with clients who have potential. You two are a lost cause." I walked over to the door and pressed the button for security. "Chloe," I said into the intercom, My appointment is over. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Davis to the freight elevator. Freight elevator, my father sputtered. We are not cargo. You are baggage, I said, and I am finally checking you. The door opened. Two large security guards men who looked like they could bench press a truck stepped in. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, one of them said. This way. My father tried one last tactic. He tried anger. He drew himself up, shaking the hand holding the crumpled bills at me. You are an ungrateful child, he shouted. You will regret this. You will need us one day. You can't buy family. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me that love was conditional, that worth was tied to obedience, and that betrayal was acceptable if the price was right. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, bright and terrifying. You are right, Marcus, I said. You can't buy family. That is why I found a new one. I turned my back on them. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I heard my mother crying. I heard my father sputtering threats. I heard the heavy footsteps of the guards. And then I heard the sound of the elevator doors sliding shut. Click. The room was silent again. I waited for the wave of guilt. I waited for the pang of regret that I had been conditioned to feel every time I disappointed them. It didn't come. Instead, I felt a lightness in my chest that was so profound it made me dizzy. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw a woman who was whole. I picked up my phone. I dialed Dante. Hey. He answered on the first ring. How did it go? It cost me $40, I said. Dante laughed. Best money you ever spent. I looked down at the street below. I couldn't distinguish my parents from the thousands of other tiny figures moving through the maze of the city. They were just people now. Strangers with familiar faces who had once known a girl named Zara. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I am coming home early, I told Dante. I want to cook dinner. Come home, he said. We are waiting for you. I hung up the phone. I grabbed my purse. I walked out of my office past the receptionist, past the security desk, and out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the rest of my life. I didn't look back. Not once. Because there was nothing behind me worth looking at. The rearview mirror was empty. The road ahead was wide open. And for the first time in 32 years, I was the one driving. The air in Paris tastes different than the air in Atlanta. It tastes like butter rain and absolute freedom. I am standing on the terrace of a penthouse suite overlooking the Seine. The Eiffel Tower is glittering in the distance, a golden spire against the midnight blue sky. Inside, the sound of laughter and clinking crystal spills out from the room, where 50 of our closest friends are celebrating. It has been exactly 1 year since I walked down the aisle on a private island and burned my old life to the ground. Tonight is our first anniversary. Dante is inside holding court near the grand piano. He is wearing a velvet tuxedo jacket, looking every inch the tycoon he is. Eleanor Sterling is there too, sipping champagne and telling a senator a joke that makes him roar with laughter. But before I join them, I take a moment to look at my phone. I am not looking for validation. I am looking for a reminder of how far I have come. I open the search bar and type in a name, Bianca Davis. 3,000 miles away in a cramped break room of a discount grocery store in the suburbs of Georgia, my sister is staring at her own phone. She is wearing a polyester vest that is 2 sizes too big. Her name tag hangs crookedly on her chest. Her hair, once her pride and joy, is pulled back in a messy ponytail, showing dark roots that haven't seen a salon in 6 months. She is trying to take a selfie. She angles the phone high, trying to crop out the vending machine and the peeling paint on the wall behind her. She applies a heavy filter, one that smooths out the exhaustion under her eyes. She posts it to Instagram with the caption, "Grinding hard. Big things coming. Stay tuned. Hashtag boss babe. Come back." She refreshes the page. 1 minute passes. 2 minutes. 0 likes. She refreshes again. 1 like. It is from a bot account selling crypto scams. Bianca Davis, once the golden child who thought the world owed her a living, is now a cashier at a budget mart. She spends 8 hours a day scanning frozen peas and generic brand cereal. Beep, beep, beep. The sound haunts her dreams. She lives in a studio apartment above a laundromat. The hallway smells of bleach and old cooking oil. She sleeps on a mattress on the floor because she had to sell her furniture to pay the legal fees from the St. Regis lawsuit. Liam did not pay her a dime. He annulled the marriage, reclaimed the ring, and left her with nothing but her maiden name and a credit score of 400. Her manager, a teenager with acne and a power complex, sticks his head into the break room. Davis, break is over, he barks. Line 3 is backing up, and fix your vest. You look sloppy. Bianca flinches. Yes, sir, she whispers. She puts her phone in her pocket. As she walks back to the register, she imagines that one day a rich man will walk in, see her beauty beneath the fluorescent lights, and save her. But the only men who come in are tired fathers buying diapers and teenagers buying energy drinks. They don't look at her. To them, she is just part of the machinery, invisible. I close her profile. I don't feel joy. I don't feel pity. I feel nothing. It is the indifference of a statue looking down at a bug. I type in 2 more names, Marcus and Evelyn Davis. They don't have social media anymore. They couldn't afford the internet bill, and frankly, the comments section was too brutal for their fragile egos. They are currently sitting in a government-subsidized housing unit on the outskirts of the city. The walls are thin. They can hear their neighbors arguing about money, a conversation that mirrors their own daily reality. My father Marcus sits in a recliner he salvaged from the curb. He is staring at the television, watching a rerun of a show he used to watch in his mansion. He sold the house 6 months ago. The proceeds went entirely to paying off the debts from the wedding and the lease penalties Dante's company enforced with ruthless efficiency. My mother Evelyn is in the kitchenette heating up canned soup. She wears a bathrobe that has seen better days. She brings the bowls to the small scratched table. You forgot the napkins, Marcus grumbles, not looking away from the TV. Get them yourself, Evelyn snaps. Her voice is shrill bitter. I am not your maid. If you had been a better negotiator, we wouldn't be in this rat hole. If you hadn't insisted on crashing that island, we would still have some dignity, Marcus shoots back. You and your obsession with Eleanor Sterling, she looked at you like you were garbage, Evelyn. Don't you dare speak her name. Evelyn screams, slamming her spoon down. They eat in silence. The silence is heavy with blame. They have no friends left. The country club revoked their membership when the dues bounced. Their old neighbors stopped inviting them to parties. They are alone in a room full of boxes they haven't unpacked, trapped in a prison of their own making. They still talk about me, though. I know they do. They tell themselves that I am the villain. They tell themselves that I stole their happiness. They cling to that narrative because it is the only thing that keeps them from looking in the mirror and seeing the truth, that they bet on the wrong daughter and they lost everything. I put my phone away. The screen goes black. I turn around and walk back into the party. The warmth of the room hits me instantly. Dante sees me. He excuses himself from the conversation and walks over. He hands me a glass of vintage champagne. Everything okay? He asks, looking at me closely. I smile. Everything is perfect. He leads me to the edge of the balcony. Below us, the Seine flows like a ribbon of black silk. The city of lights is awake and alive. I have a surprise for you, Dante says. He pulls a small envelope from his jacket pocket. It is not jewelry. It is a deed. I bought the building, he says softly. Which building, I ask. The one where your parents are living, he says. The subsidized housing complex. I bought the whole development this morning. I look at him surprised. Are you going to evict them? Dante shakes his head. No. That would be too easy. And it would make them victims. No, I am going to renovate it. I am going to improve the heating. I am going to fix the roof. I am going to make it a decent place to live for all the families there who are struggling. He pauses, a small mischievous smile playing on his lips. But I am going to rename the building. Oh, I ask. What are you going to call it, the Zara Heights, he says. I laugh, a genuine belly-deep laugh that feels like sunlight. So every time they walk in the front door, they have to see my name, I ask. Every single day, Dante confirms. They will live in a home provided by the daughter they rejected. They will be safe and warm because of you, and they will hate every second of it. It is a mercy, I say, and a punishment. It is justice, Dante says. He raises his glass. To us, I whisper. We clink glasses. The crystal sings. I look out at the Eiffel Tower again. I think about the journey that brought me here. The years of being the scapegoat. The years of silence. The pain of the wedding day that wasn't. It would have been so easy to let them destroy me. It would have been so easy to shrink, to give in, to hand over the venue and serve the drinks. But I chose the harder path. I chose to walk away. I realized something that night on the island, and I confirm it again tonight. The best revenge is not setting their house on fire. It is not screaming at them until they understand. They will never understand. Narcissists do not have the capacity for self-reflection. The best revenge is simply removing your access. It is taking your energy, your money, and your light and pointing it toward people who actually deserve it. My revenge is this penthouse. My revenge is this man holding my hand. My revenge is the peace that settles in my chest when I wake up in the morning. My parents and Bianca are living in a hell of their own creation. They are trapped in a cycle of bitterness and envy. They check my social media from burner accounts, watching me live a life they can never touch. They are spectators in the nosebleed seats of my success. I don't need to do anything else to them. Their punishment is waking up as themselves every single day. I turn my back on the city view and look at the party. Eleanor Sterling waves at me. My friends are waiting. I step back into the light, leaving the darkness outside where it belongs. And to you, listening to this story, remember this. I didn't lose my family overnight. I lost myself slowly by staying silent through family betrayal. I kept excusing, forgiving, and enduring. I told myself patience was strength, but I was wrong. God sees what we endure. God knows what breaks us quietly. And God never asks us to disappear just to keep the peace. If there's one lesson I learned, it's this: don't become invisible like I did. Don't let repeated family betrayal convince you that your worth is negotiable. What I called loyalty became my prison, and what looked like family revenge from the outside was really self-respect returning. This story isn't about punishment, it's about awakening. True family revenge is choosing dignity over approval. True family revenge is walking away before bitterness owns you. And when family betrayal reveals itself again and again, listen. God gives us clarity, not confusion. God gives us courage, not fear. If this story spoke to you, leave a comment and share where you're watching from. Like, share, and subscribe if these stories resonate with you. Thank you for staying until the end. And a gentle warning: upcoming stories may include fictional and dramatized elements created for educational reflection. If that's not for you, please feel free to choose content that better suits you.